Hello and welcome to Cinema to the Letter. This episode's that classic known as Star Wars. On Cinema to the Letter, we break down the very nature of cinema letter by letter. For each episode of a season topic, we cover 6 films that fit as C for classic, I for indie, N for new, E for egregious, M for masterpiece, and A for atypical. Because who doesn't love an acronym, am I right? I am Thomas, your red leader, standing by, which I should note, this is the first official episode we've done since last August, and as I said then, and I'll reiterate now, Brian is no longer my co-host. I'm sort of, flying solo, as it were. But for this special season, I have multiple guests lined up for every episode to help me dissect Star Wars in honor of the franchise returning to the silver screen this summer. And my guests here, I have, first off, a regular from the show that you would have heard previously, and I can't believe I got her out of the Mos Eisley Cantina, away from all her alien friends to be here. Lili Labens. Lili, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I like Harrison Ford. I hope I'm not too high to remember my lines. So,
I would hope not, no. But also with us is someone you might have heard if you're a Patreon subscriber, patreon.com/cinema number 2 letter, but he's making his debut onto the main feed, despite the fact that, he might be a bit short for a stormtrooper. But we're glad to have him here. Charlie Suor. Charlie, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, even though I think I'm average size.
Well, it's not about the size of the stormtrooper. It's about how you don't hit anything at all. With
That's what they've
whatever,
been telling me.
right? Your incredible training that you've had. Um, but for this season, as I mentioned, we're doing a Star Wars season, and of course, we're covering our C for classic here, which naturally had to be the original Star Wars, which might also be called A New Hope, depending on when you watched it, depending on what version you watched that would be available to you. We'll get into all that. But in addition to that, I've decided to start a new segment for this particular season called Guest, a Star Wars Story, in which, before we even get into the movie, I ask the 2 guests that I have for the episode about their backstory with the Star Wars franchise, how they got into it, what that franchise means to them. So, Charlie, we'll start with you. Charlie, tell us, Charlie, a Star Wars story.
So, my story's a little bit different than most people who I've talked to. I got into Star Wars pretty late, around my freshman year of high school, just because my parents didn't really like film like that. Uh, so I was pretty much brought up on like Disney classics and then just whatever I would find for myself on Netflix when Netflix went to streaming. So, my freshman year of high school, that's when I'm like, you know what? I really like film. I'm gonna try to watch like the great films. And I picked really weird choices throughout that, but I did pick Star Wars and I watched A New Hope and I'm like, oh, this is cinema. And then I watched and then I watched the rest of the ones that were out at the time, caught a couple in theaters for better or for worse.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, A New Hope remains my all-time favorite. I don't know how many times that I have watched it since watching it that first time, but I'm glad that I found my way around to Star Wars one way or another.
And Lily, why don't you tell us about Lily, a Star Wars story?
well, I'm sort of representing for the novice fans, also sort of a newbie to Star Wars myself, but I'm not a clone. I swear I do like Star Wars. I also actually literally watched A New Hope, the first Star Wars, probably late middle school, early high school. But it was such a part of the culture and still is obviously that I knew references, character names, like details of Chewbacca's fur before I ever even saw any of these films. I can credit some of that to the Family Guy special, shamelessly.
Of course.
And That was what was so fun about watching A New Hope specifically for the first time, was saying like, oh, they didn't even really parody some of it. It's almost just verbatim how some of this goes, and the jokes are so intricate and specific that you have to be a true fan to know them. And then I just dove in deep and I watched all of them, and I'm sort of one of those annoying fans who just likes them all. I don't really have I'm not a wine connoisseur. I just like wine. I'm not a Star Wars connoisseur. I just like Star Wars. I like space combat. I like pew pew pew. I like, sexy stoner Harrison Ford. What can I say? I'm a simple woman. So I think that this first one has a little bit of everything, and a little bit of that special sauce that feels kind of like an indie film, and that's why this one is also my favorite.
Well, with this segment, I'll also be revealing elements of my Star Wars story that at least relate to the film that we're talking about for the individual episode. And I guess with A New Hope, I can at least open up by saying I'm much more of a typical Star Wars fan in terms of got into it when I was a very small child. I still remember very distinctly watching the original trilogy with my father when he brought back the VHS. Like, there was a VHS set that came out in, I believe, 1995, which was the last time that the non-special edition versions of the movies came out in any form. And he got that from a buddy of his, and we spent like a weekend watching like Friday night, A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back the Saturday, and Jedi the Sunday. And I just remember very distinctly watching this, and like I'd been somewhat aware of Star Wars, I think, just because of like you're mentioning, Lily, the kind of cultural osmosis was even at that age. I was aware somewhat of like, like C-3PO, R2-D2 or whatever. But I remember like watching this, and especially a notable thing about this was each of these VHSs started with segments of an interview between Leonard Maltin and George Lucas, which the folks here on the Zoom can see my avatar is from that interview. That is my first vision of what George Lucas is, which is this guy in like this blazer and this turtleneck, just talking, and this voice about, we were making Star Wars and it was like this. And I just remember it being like a sort of, to quote this movie, my first step into a larger world in terms of being aware of like who a director was, and that they were like some sort of key part. At that age, obviously, I was like, I don't know what George fucking did on the set. Like, George Lucas was one of the first names I became aware of in terms of a director. And Star Wars was like such an obsession of mine as a child. From that weekend onward, I had many of the action figures. I had like this big C-3PO shaped case. It was like shaped like C-3PO with shoulders, and when you open it up, you would have little tiny like compartments for different action figures. I stuffed that thing fucking full. I had a little Death Star that like when you pushed a tab, it would open up, and there would be different scenes. Like there would be some of the inner of the Death Star, but also a bit of Tatooine, a bit of other things. And I still even remember. I really want to shout out my grandmother, who like would love to read to me when I was a child, and there was a certain point where I had her read the Star Wars Visual Dictionary, which is like one of these books that had like, pictures, and they would have like descriptions next to them. And my grandmother, who was a teacher, who always encouraged me like, oh, read no matter what, it's fine, was still at the same time, I could even tell at that age, was just like, all right, I'm reading about fucking wampas and this other shit that she had no idea about. I would like correct her on the pronunciation of things, like a good little dork at like age 5 or whatever. But yeah, so Star Wars was a massive thing for me as a child, and A New Hope was a big part of that, which, we'll just go ahead and play the trailer now here as we jump into Star Wars A New Hope.
Somewhere in space, this may all be happening right now. 20th Century Fox and George Lucas, the man who brought you American Graffiti, now bring you an adventure unlike anything on your planet. Star Wars.
Here they come.
It's a big, sprawling space saga of rebellion and romance. It's a spectacle, light years ahead of its time.
I am C-3PO, human cyborg relations, and this is my counterpart, R2-D2.
Hello.
Star Wars, 1 billion years in the making, and it's coming to your galaxy this summer.
So, Star Wars: A New Hope, as I mentioned, one of many titles this movie went under. The main title, of course, when it first came out, was just Star Wars. Period. Came out May 25th, 1977, from director-writer George Lucas. And I'm curious, before we even get right into the movie, what is your familiarity with the other George Lucas non-Star Wars films? Because in terms of his directorial career, there's only 2 of them. It's so weird to realize that like George Lucas's directorial career is just THX 1138, American Graffiti, then Star Wars, Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, and he's never directed another movie besides those.
Wow.
Yeah, I know the other films exist, and that's about where my knowledge stops and starts.
I actually did a George Lucas double feature for my blog a couple years ago, and I was so curious. I did THX 1138 and American Graffiti. I love the juxtaposition of how different those were, and I could
Yes.
have the lore wrong, but I think if I remember correctly, Francis Ford Coppola or someone was like, I need to know that you can make a normal movie, and that's why
Yes.
we have American Graffiti.
Right.
Which is funny because it's just does not feel like him, but at the same time, it does sort of have a similar rapscallions scallywag charm to it. Yeah, I THX 1138, that is a trip. I was watching a version of it that I didn't even realize was not the correct version because it had a soundtrack playing over it that was like EDM, and I was so into it that I did not even realize. I was like, I'm not watching the right movie. Like there's not supposed to be this modern day music over this, but he's clearly full of crazy zany ideas, and it's awesome that Star Wars took off the way it did. But like, I feel like he could have done that with these other movies too, because he's got a lot of cool ideas.
Yeah, it is interesting when you watch both those movies and we're like, do feel so disparate, but then you watch A New Hope and it's like, oh, all of this like makes sense together. Because THX 113, there's a lot of that kind of like cold 70s sci-fi that is like obviously all throughout A New Hope, but then also the kind of weird ragtag group of misfits charm that you get with like Han, Luke, and Leia, especially like all the stuff in the Death Star feels just like a sci-fi version of American Graffiti. And I say that in the most positive way possible.
Yes.
Like a lot of the hijinks feel very similar to American Graffiti, which, like, important to know that like THX 1138 was like a very weird experimental movie that Francis Ford Coppola, his mentor, produced and helped get out there, and that movie bombed horribly. So then that prompted, as Lily was kind of referencing earlier, Coppola, I believe, was like, I want to see you try and do like a silly comedy. Like, see if you can do that, something more commercial. And he did that with American Graffiti, which was very successful when it came out. I believe at the time, it was the most successful movie compared to its budget, like, of all time at that point. Because it was a small independent movie that made a surprising amount of money. And so that prompted George to at least try and get his little space fantasy movie off the ground, his pet project that he had written to some degree. And there's a lot of, back and forth about how much he had written originally. But the lore, for the most part, goes that George wrote this massive sort of script about Anakin Starkiller, a name that would later be changed, and had like all these different stories. Basically, like, the original trilogy was originally one giant script or one giant story idea. And George even realized, like, I can't do all of this as one movie. So I'll take the first third, expand on it, and then go from there with Star Wars, which was a movie that went through all sorts of production weird difficulties, was supposed to happen at various different studios who really just declined it outright until Fox eventually picked it up. And there's all this infamous stuff. I think the most infamous thing, obviously, with it is that no one believed in Star Wars at that time, except for it was Alan Ladd Jr. was the guy at Fox who was like, all right, yeah, well, I like what you do with American Graffiti, and I have a lot of confidence in you, even if the rest of Fox does not. So we'll give you some money and we'll let you do it. And the big thing was, in his contract, he was very specific about, like, I want to make those other 2 movies, this being my project. Like, I don't want any studio interference. And very crucially, I want the rights to merchandise. Which, at the time, everyone was like, oh, what, like, Planet of the Apes? Whatever, that shit fizzled. Doesn't matter. Like, fine, fucking take that. And, for a while, Fox was very much kicking themselves about that. But it's so interesting when you hear all that backstory leading up to this movie, and also in retrospect, like, this movie feels insane to release out in 1977.
it's hard to imagine it not as the fully formed franchise Disney machine that it is now, or even that it was in the early 2000s. Like that's why I call it an indie movie, which is not groundbreaking. I know other people have said it before, but it really feels like it, and yet it is this expansive, sprawling story that has so much ambition, even from the tiniest, smallest set pieces. And it's wild to imagine that it was ever just that one self-contained story and that people didn't know how it was going to grow. And I think that's really cool and inspiring.
Yeah, every time that I rewatch A New Hope, I pretend that there aren't other movies. And I'm
Yeah.
I have a DVD box from whatever time it was made, who knows at this point. But they don't make it anymore because Disney has all the rights now. But it has the original cut without all the special effects that were added in with the prequel redubs.
Nice.
So I put that on and I just pretend. And even in that cut, it doesn't say A New Hope, it just says Star Wars. And that really helps my immersion into my fantasy. That's it. And it makes it fun. It makes it fun. And then I end the movie and I'm like, oh, what happens next? And then I remember that I do know, actually.
That is the magic of A New Hope, really, is that it does feel so self-contained, yet, like Lily's saying, it has like all this ambition, but the real genius, I think, of like A New Hope is that it feels so much like an intimate story, despite including like giant galactic empire and a
Totally.
big rebellion. It still is at the same time, like, many people have said this. It's going to be interesting talking about this movie that everyone has talked about to some degree for this entire, like, honestly, this whole season's going to be a lot of that, but it's so interesting when you like watch this again. Like, I every time I go back to A New Hope, I always try and like distance myself, because the last time I saw any Star Wars stuff was like during the pandemic. Like, it was kind of like a safety blanket when like COVID lockdown started. Just like,
Fair.
Star Wars, help me.
I think I did the same.
Yeah, 100%. It was
My
like
only
that Lord
hope.
of the Rings trilogy, a lot of that shit.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting when you just go back to it and realize, like, oh yeah, it is about truly like a small farm boy who takes his first step into a larger world, and it's like it's so weird when you consider like the big franchising machine in comparison to that. But I'm also curious, Charlie. You kind of said when I offered you to do this, you were like, oh, I really want to kind of get my sort of film connoisseur like context brain into this. How do you feel this kind of fits, especially into like the context of like 1977?
Oh, so for those of you who are just meeting me for the first time, since this is my first official appearance outside of the Patreon.
Right, this is Cinema to Letter canon, not Cinema to Letter Legends that you're previously a
Exactly.
part of.
But I have a background as a cultural historian and I do a lot of focus on film. So Star Wars is such an interesting addition into the film canon because if the theater is a church, then Star Wars is like the Bible of the blockbuster. Before this, you pretty much only had Jaws as the real big blockbuster that's getting
Mm-hmm.
asses in seats.
Mm.
But Star Wars, this is something that everyone's flocking to see. You go to see it with your family, you go to see it again and again. It lined up perfectly with the development of the multiplex, the way that we're seeing theaters change and become an experience that you're going back to. Prior to that, you sort of have that grand idea of a theater that's like in the city and everyone goes to it and it's a nice event. Then that peters off a little bit with the creation of the suburbs. But at this point, where we have Star Wars coming out, that's when you're having your malls being built. That's when you're having these community sort of centers outside of the city. And that's where you're having a lot of these theaters, these multiplexes. So that happening in tandem with this film's release gives it the opportunity to have that blockbuster effect. So I just think it's so interesting and so serendipitous that this is the film that's coming out. And like Jaws, it also pushes special effects forward in a really awesome way. We could talk for hours about all of the practical effects they did, all of the interesting sound design that they figured out the strangest things they could possibly do to make these sounds, and they can do that because it's a completely fabricated world. It's just so interesting of every little bit of major film that comes after this, you can see elements of Star Wars impacting it. So that's my tidbit.
No, I mean that's very accurate. I mean, I think it definitely at least catapulted the summer blockbuster in terms,
Definitely.
because like there had been other movies that were like big blockbusters, like you had your Bond movies and stuff like that. But yeah, this really elevated like what the summer movie season was, given it like Memorial Day weekend, massive sort of big weekend when it came out. Star Wars was the top grossing movie of its year when it came out in 1977. Here are the other ones in the top five: Smokey and the Bandit,
Oh.
Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Saturday Night Fever, and The Goodbye Girl. Keep in mind, The Goodbye Girl is a Neil Simon written comedy drama starring Richard Dreyfuss about him having a relationship with a single mother. That movie was like part of the top five. That's like what you had in the 70s. It was like a small intimate dramedy. Was like one of the highest grossing movies of the year. But like Star Wars is definitely the beginning of like getting that stuff out there. Even then, like Smokey and the Bandit, also like a very indie comedy like race movie that's about like fucking convoy truckers and shit. I mean, you're number two. Like Star Wars helps like eliminate those kind of movies from the top five pretty much.
Thomas, you mentioned how like the Bond movies were very financially successful. And I think the big difference in like that being a blockbuster and Star Wars being a blockbuster is the family element to it, where you can get
Right.
everyone seeing this movie, talking about this movie, and then because you have kids watching it, then you can really sell those toys.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's actually what I was thinking is like, and I could be wrong and y'all correct me, but this feels like one of the first multi-generation spanning pieces of pop culture that I can think about because of the time in which it came out and its accessibility and the word of mouth hype it had. I know my grandpa on my mom's side, he was like super into sci-fi. He watched all of Doctor Who and Star Trek, and when this came out, it was just such a no-brainer. And he took my mom and her siblings, who at this point were like teenagers who didn't give a shit, and it really bonded them and continued to be a thing he would check in on, right up until he passed. And I just think that's cool because I don't know a lot of other pieces of media that I could share with an older person like that, or a younger person that, it all has like a similar impact.
I would definitely affirm that.
Yeah, I would say that's pretty accurate. I mean, I guess I have the weird thing where like my parents were slightly older, so like my grandparents had like no idea about Star Wars really. They were just like, yeah, it's the space thing. Like your dad said he saw and he liked it, but like we didn't really give a shit. At the same time, it's definitely been one that like has progressed forward. Like in the almost 50 years since Star Wars, it's definitely been a thing that like has been passed down, has a lot of cultural cachet. Though it's been interesting seeing how, like, I don't know, whenever I talk to people who are especially like a little bit younger than I am, I tend to either get like, oh yeah, big Star Wars fan, or I haven't even touched Star Wars. I kind of see like either one of those, and I think that kind of speaks to its pop cultural sort of presence. That there's like, oh, either like, oh, I love it, or it's daunting. That's a lot to get into. And I don't blame people for that necessarily, especially in the wake of recent years where it has become ever expanding. But it's interesting when you do get somebody who just kind of like watch, especially like A New Hope, and you have that kind of like immediate gateway kind of thing. Lily, I'm curious, as someone who was like so aware culturally of Star Wars, but was like, okay, like have I been overexposed to it? Like what really gravitated to you when you first saw it?
I think in the least pretentious way possible, I liked how it felt like a film, and like you said, had captured like a certain intimate way of telling this big space story that I knew in the back of my head was much bigger than this first small movie. And I remember thinking that a combination of the music and the set design and obviously the big name stars makes it, a big giant movie with lots of offshoots. But just simply watching that first movie, being on the ride, like first seeing R2D2 and C3PO, it feels so quaint and sweet. And I remember thinking that, I don't know, just like as a little kid, like, well, this is some boy shit. Like, I'm not gonna care. Um, and really being pulled in by the story. And I gotta say, in recent years, I don't know if, these bigger budget sci-fi or supernatural or whatever you have it, fantastical types of stories. I don't know if the story is given that same amount of focus and care. And, I guess I can credit that to George Lucas, and it's no fault of his if any of the others have gotten further away from the story, but you don't have to keep up with any like crazy dynamics or family trees just yet. Like, you're just with that ragtag crew of people, like you said, and it feels very special and unique. And I just remember thinking like, oh, this is like a fun movie. This isn't like a big, like, strap in and pay attention sort of a thing. Like, it's very, very accessible and very entertaining. One of my favorite Simpsons things is when they're making fun of the Hayden Christensen movies, and they're really focusing on like the space bureaucracy of it all, and they're doing like attendance at a meeting of like all these space people, and that's like a 2 hour part of the movie. I sort of had that going into it, worrying about that. I was like, okay, let me focus. But no, I think it's good because it's simple, and yet the story is anything but that.
I think a big part of that is also the fact that, like, something that's still insane about this movie too is that the first about 20 minutes or so where our main characters we're following are the two droids, C-3PO and R2-D2. That helps you kind of ease in where it's like, oh, they're these mechanical creatures, but they have an inherent buddy comedy dynamic of like big tall guy, short stout guy kind of thing. But you also have like just following them, they feel so much like they are kind of thrust into the situation where like the opening of this being a smaller spaceship being attacked by a giant spaceship. And then you follow these two guys who are just like, oh man, we need to get out of here. I hate being here. So much bad stuff's happening. Is there any way we can get off this place? And it's a real credit to George once again that like we follow these two characters and like we get hints of like, oh, the Carrie Fisher we see for a little bit and stuff like that. But we don't have like a main human character we follow until Lucas introduced about like 25 minutes into the movie.
Yeah, I think it's a smart move for taking that like pre-existing like buddy comedy like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern type of character duo and using that as your guide and as your audience stand-in. And like you said, like them getting thrust in, that makes it okay for us to have no clue what's happening in this world and just go with it.
There's something so unique and fun about robots that go like that are not so like technically impressive, that are just like human beings made this, but not in a way that feels like it's arts and craftsy. It's legitimate. But that's why those remastered versions just kind of get on my nerves, because I like seeing the details and the practical makeup designs. I like that the tech feels kind of old, like the original Alien films. I feel similarly that I like the sort of like, I don't want to say steampunk, but just the combo of like the old and the new tech, or like how we used to think the future would look. I think we lost that, obviously, and I love that.
The lived in quality is like very key to this
Yeah.
production design. That's like, literally a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, where it's like there is a fairy tale element of like this is in a different
Yes.
world, but at the same time you do have like the grime. Especially, I should note, I watched both the currently available, I believe it's called the McClunky cut, which is the most recent cut that George had his hands on that premiere on Disney Plus, which features Greedo saying that very bizarre word. And then I watched that version, and also I'll just say a version that I totally got legally, that is not at all despecialized in any way.
Oh, certainly not.
No. Yes, that is closer to the original cut, and I think it is so fascinating when you see these two different things, and at the same time, like when you watch that original version, it still feels like very alien, but there is kind of more of a charm to like seeing, oh, like matte paintings and like some of these, like other characters that are not there. But then I kept watching and I'm like, I wish do-bags were in the background of every scene. The slug guys that the stormtroopers are riding. We need those in every scene.
God.
Amen, brother.
Yeah. So silly.
And real talk, I think that is easily like the worst thing, because like, it's kind of gauche to make fun of George Lucas at this point, given there's so many decades of people making fun of George Lucas at this point. But like, that is still the one craw I have. It's just like, I don't know, releasing at least the original cut alongside your special editions in like a good pristine format. Because I know what you're talking about, Charlie, earlier about I had it was the 2004 special edition box set that had like those versions, but notably they are like from the Laserdisc and they are not cleaned up in any way. They are just like, and they're almost like they're formatted weirdly too. I think they're like 4x3 almost. It's like it's not a pristine quality. George's just like, sure, fine, fuck it, it's there. You can watch it, I guess. Fuck you. But to not have like a cleaned up version of that edition, I think is like still a crime. And there are rumors currently floating that for the 50th anniversary, those might be available. A new version of that.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's so important to have like the despecialized version because like we've been saying, it's important that this film is like dirty and messy and rough.
Yes.
That adds to its charm, that adds to its feel, but also it was a very intentional decision to do space in that way. Because prior to this, your other big space movie is 2001,
Right.
where space is clean and neat and very mid-century modern, futuristic, nice and tidy. So to have your version of space be dirty and grimy, and then juxtaposing that to the Empire, which is pristine, you need the difference to be represented. And if you go in and smooth it out, well, hell, why'd you do all that in the first place?
But yeah, it's interesting also, like, I did a bit of, like, cursory research as well into, like, what were some of the other, like, sci-fi movies, like, leading up to this? And I've seen there's some interesting ones, like Silent Running, which I would recommend to anybody. I've recommended previously on the show, has a lot of the DNA of this movie, including, like, a lot of the crew involved created, like, robots for that movie. And that one has sort of, like, a lived-in feel that's really interesting. But then there's also something like Logan's Run, which was one of the bigger sci-fi movies, like, right before this. And I hadn't actually seen before. Very good movie, but you can tell like that one is definitely more in the like, oh, there's a utopia kind of angle. And then if we're outside of that utopia, it's very Planet of the Apes coded of like, oh, it's a primitive society that is like completely like been abandoned by man and all this other stuff. And it's interesting watching this where it's like it's both things can coexist. Where it's like, yeah, there is a future here, but you go to like Mos Eisley and there's all these cool aliens around, but they're all drinking and the bar's dusty, and someone will get their arm sliced off, and then everyone will move back on from like, oh, whatever, fine. Anyway, that kind of thing. Like that is so crucial as well. And I think another big part of that is obviously with C-3PO and R2-D2. I love watching, especially like in that specialized edition, you see like they are covered in like oil. Like C-3PO has like these weird kind of like nipples on him that are like constantly leaking oil basically, and it gives you more of like an everyman, right? Yeah, you know, all power to him. But I just that gives you even more of like a connection where it's just like, oh, this droid is like kind of breaking, he needs maintenance. Clearly he's like been in the middle of a huge adventure. He just walked through so much sand on his own, which I love that when he like kicks R2-D2 just like, fine, you go that way, I'll go this way. Just like that kind of thing. Just like that C-3PO and R2-D2 have had like a shared history that we don't know about yet. And that he's just kind of like constantly vexed by R2-D2, just like, all right, you're going to do something else, you little scamp, whatever, fine. You go over there, see how you care. And they both end up in the same place, which is so great. And then the moment C-3PO sees him, she's like, oh, R2, I found you again. Like, you fucking asshole. You just like abandoned him. And now you see him again like,
queens, they're the best.
Yeah. Yeah, their history, it's sexual in nature.
Thank you for saying that.
I mean, that's the Star Wars story we're all waiting for, really.
Exactly.
Yeah. Boy, is that one messy.
Some of those other sci-fi movies from the era you're talking about, like 2001, like Logan's Run, or some of those like utopia dystopia ones, like they're very like heavy on the existential dread, which I'm all here for and is like a crucial part of sci-fi. But there's not a lot of fun to be had. And this feels like a shift or a turning point in maybe storytelling in general, but you know, at least within the realm of sci-fi and these sort of big blockbuster movies where it's like we're allowed to have fun. There doesn't have to be that deep of a lesson. And I remember in high school when we were learning about, like, I think it was freshman year, like the narrative arc of the hero's journey. You know, this was the movie. It was like this and Aladdin were the ones we watched as the example. And it was like, this is like perfectly encapsulating everything about that. And just having a bunch of goofballs, a bunch of people literally figuring it out as they go along, both like in the character sense and in kind of a meta sense of them making this movie. I think it's really cool for that.
Yeah, I definitely first heard about like the Joseph Campbell stuff through Star Wars, specifically George talking about it as like a big influence on him. And yeah, I mean, it's all here, the refusal of the call, the, all that other stuff, all embodied by a Luke Skywalker, as played by Mark Hamill. Let's talk a bit about Luke. How do we feel about Luke as protagonist?
If I may, I rewatched this for this because it had been a couple years. He's kind of whiny. And I don't dislike him. And by the way, I'd probably be doing the exact same thing if I got ripped out of my like regular routine and like had to go be responsible for like saving the universe or whatever.
Right, you want to just go to Tashi's station and pick up some power converters, Lily. That's all you wanted to do.
And I get that, but it's also like, babe, when was your life ever going to be this exciting? Like, take the opportunity. And so it's just funny watching it now because little things like that stand out to me. I'm like, I don't remember him being so whiny.
Yeah, I love that little gay boy.
Yep.
But he pairs so perfectly with C-3PO and R2-D2 because you have three queens working together to figure something out. I have always liked Luke. I have always like identified with Luke, and it's just fun to watch him bitch and moan. It's fun to watch him sort of figure things out, and I like how in this and like pretty much every movie that Luke is in, he just kind of like fumbles into something, and I don't feel like we actually like see his growth from point A to point C. Like they always skip over B.
Yeah.
But I like that. I think it's a funny, good bit. So I don't think it's a lack of writing. I think it's like his self-discovery part right here is a little boring. Let's just fast forward along. So I think that he's a fun and interesting character. I think that you get like the meat of the issue and what you want to know with the character rather than sort of dragging on, which is a little off, makes him even whinier, but I still think it's a good time. I think it's really fun.
Well, I just think it's a tough position to be in because he is I mean, they're all underdogs, but he also like immediately you've got Han Solo and Chewie coming in who are like that. I mean, that's a pair of toys right there. Like you don't like right then and there, they're like ready made, but like fully realized characters. So that's got to be tough to compete with that if you're Luke or Mark Hamill. And so I'm gonna take back some of the whininess and say it's all valid because he really is like he's like a child also compared to everyone else, right?
Yeah. A big part of this that like I always like forget and then when I watch it I remember is like there's the bit where he's cleaning up C-3PO and R2-D2 and the first shot of him in that sequence as like C-3PO is being lowered down to the oil bath is he's playing with like a model of one of those other like star ships. I forgot which one it's called, but he's playing with one of those, and it's like, oh, that immediately connects him to like any child in the audience. That he's like he dreams of being able to fly a ship like that. That he wants to be able to like go out there, and it's definitely a thing where like I remember maybe around like my teenage years when I was rewatching Star Wars, it was like, oh, this guy's kind of whiny, not at all being self-aware to any degree about myself. And then you like look back at it as you get older, and you're like, oh no, that feels believable. It's like that right mix of whining for like an actual teenage boy that like makes sense. He's helping out with his aunt and uncle, but he clearly has these aspirations like I want to join up with the academy. I want to get out of just Tatooine. I don't want to just be here. And it's all really crystallized, of course, for like the dueling sunset scene, which is like such a like evocative Star Wars image. And sometimes like those images become so iconic that they kind of like lose their like original purpose. But that sequence never does for me. Every time it's just like, yep, that's a guy who wants to get off this planet. That even though it has two sunsets, it's still just like, but there's got to be more outside there beyond those two suns. There has to be something beyond. Admittingly, Tatooine, which it's so weird that Tatooine is like the planet we've seen the most in the Star Wars movies because it's so like desolate. It's literally a fucking desert.
Well, we've seen all of it at this point, so that's helpful.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, that's true. That we've seen every single nook and cranny in any different media. But yeah, it is so weird that it's like we keep coming back to this place, but I guess it feels kind of like the perfect tone setter planet. Where it's like, yeah, you got the dunes, you got the sand, you got the sense that like there's creatures here, but like they're either like skeevy or they're just kind of like treated as normal. kind of thing. It feels very much like it's the base planet from which like all the other ones kind of grow out from. But at the same time, you still get kind of like bits and spurts. Like to talk a bit about, you were mentioning Han Solo and all that. The Mos Eisley Cantina scene is very crucial for this whole thing. For the first step, once again, to a larger world. And you see all these different aliens. Who's your favorite alien you see in this movie?
That's a really hard question. You should have asked us that so we could have prepared ahead of time.
Oh, I should have given you a syllabus of like what I was going to ask you.
Yeah. And do I know how to pronounce their name, let alone spell it?
Oh, you don't have to open Wikipedia for me here. Don't worry about it.
I was
you can
like,
describe them.
Glup Shido or whatever the fuck people are talking about.
I will take Glup Shido for any answer, of course. But...
Okay. Well, who's... I don't know how we're defining alien, but what about that guy who's just like, I don't like you, and he doesn't like you either?
Yes.
Because that's kind of awesome, just to randomly pick a fight with a kid in a bar who's literally minding his own business. I think that's pretty cool.
I have the death sentence on 12 systems. Good for you?
The fuck?
I really like his buddy though, who's like, I believe was called Walrus Man. Like by the fan community. Cool. And yeah, he just is literally like an ass for a face, like for a mouth specifically. Just like, sure. Yeah, he's great. But I don't know, my favorite of especially the guys in the cantina is like there's the one guy who looks like a slug man. Who's just like he kind of looks like a snail but without like a shell. It's just like he's got like a normal body, I guess, but he's just got like a weird snail head of some sort. Just like that guy rules.
Yeah.
Am I basic if I go with the band? What are the... I can't remember the name. Is it like the module nodes or like something like that?
Yeah, the modal nodes, I believe, where they're performing. Do we all know what the genre of music is? Do we know?
Hell yeah.
Oh, God.
Lily, do you know what it is?
I'm ashamed to say I do not.
The original canon name for the genre of music they're playing is jizz.
Because of course, why would it be anything else?
Literally just George being like, I don't want to say jazz. Different vowel. Though I have heard that Disney has been trying to retcon jizz out of continuity. And they're trying to make it, I believe, Jatz or something, Jatz. And I want to say right now, I'm not nearly as critical of Disney Star Wars as some other people, but that's bullshit. Keep it jizz.
That's where I draw the line.
How dare you try and take away our jizz like that?
I think they look like if you like shaved a French bulldog.
Oh yeah.
That's pretty accurate.
And that delights me in a way. And they're musically talented. What more can I ask for?
And I mean that music slaps, really.
Oh, yeah.
I'd chill out at the club to some modal nodes jizz, you know?
Yeah, big fan of jizz.
Yeah, a pro jizz podcast here, send us a letter. But of course, here we also do meet Han Solo and Chewbacca, who are very key. I love the fact, by the way, that like we haven't talked about Obi-Wan that much. We'll get to him, but the first time you see Chewbacca is just Obi-Wan Kenobi casually like talking to him at the bar. Like some guy moves and he's like, "Hey, what's up? How are you?"
It's because they met at the club,
right?
Yeah. They're bros.
Yeah. Right. But yeah, we meet Han Solo and Chewbacca here, and I get what you're talking about, Lily, in terms of like they do feel automatically like, oh, like just right out of the packaging, kind of like perfect characters kind of thing. But I do like also what works about Han Solo and Ford performing him is like he's just at the right level of like treating whatever threats there are in Star Wars seriously, but also not treating everything about the Star Wars universe seriously, because like there's the danger of either making him just like the traditional square-jawed hero, sort of a Buck Rogers, which would have been an influence, like with Flash Gordon, that from George originally, those old serials. But then there's also the danger of, I think, a lot of movies after this, and especially say like the Marvel Cinematic Universe does this, of like, oh, we're gonna have him do quips and not treat any of this seriously. He has just the right middle ground of that, with just like when he's talking to like Ben and Luke about like, oh yeah, you know, it's the Kessel. I did the Kessel Run in 5 parsecs or whatever. Like, I don't worry about it. I'm totally cool. And they leave, and he's like, oh, they're so desperate. Thank God, I really needed this. It's so funny that it's just like has so much cool, but it's all hiding the fact that like Jabba's on my ass. I have so much money that I owe. That makes him incredibly relatable.
Yeah, he's like wanted by the space mob immediately. Like,
yeah,
this is a trustworthy character.
Yeah, But Lily, go into this a bit. Like you were talking about how Harrison Ford in this movie. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, it's like, come on, be professional. Lots of people working really hard, lots of, people probably underpaid in a hot, hot desert and all these things. And the lead who beat out all these other people doesn't even have his fucking lines memorized because he's getting stoned all the time. On the one hand, I'm like, that's crazy. What the hell? On the other hand, it is iconic. And it obviously worked regardless. And there's some true, like, inspiring beauty to that to me. I think he has chemistry with every single character. I love his will they won't they thing with Leia. I love his kind of like, you know, noogieing of Luke. He doesn't literally do that, I don't think, but that's the vibe they give me. And
little brother kind of energy. Yeah.
yeah, that would have been the
Yeah.
normal way to say that. I I just think he has so much swag. Hate to use that word, but he feels so lived in, fully realized and developed, and yet he's got that kind of scumbag charm to him where like he's not gonna be a Jedi. He's not gonna, he doesn't believe in the Force or whatever. And there is something very charming to that kind of outsider guy who reluctantly gets pulled in to the good side to help out the good guys. But so funny that Harrison Ford he was like a carpenter or something. Like he was not really acting, and I can't remember everything, but I think it's beautiful that he just stumbled into like one of the most iconic roles of all time, which then led to his next several iconic roles of all time. It's just,
Yeah.
it feels so effortless to me. And with him,
Yeah.
I do think it was. I don't know if that could be said about everyone else, but knowing how little he was prepared for this, I do think it was effortless.
I mean, there's been a lot about
Totally.
like because he had worked previously with Lucas because he was in American Graffiti. He's
Oh,
also
right.
he was in a couple other things. Like also, I would recommend anybody the Francis Ford Coppola movie, The Conversation. He has a
Oh,
small
yeah.
but very intense role in that movie. That's very good. But yeah, he'd been a carpenter previously to that, and he originally Lucas did not want him to play the role because he's like, I don't want you to be like my Bobby De Niro, I don't want you to just be like in all my movies like you are with like he is with Francis's movies. And some people who auditioned. I should mention, I would recommend seeking out the audition reels for this movie because a big notable thing about it is that there's a lot of reels of like Lucas auditioning actors alongside Brian De Palma auditioning for Carrie. So you see a
Whoa.
lot of like those actors from either cast auditioning for either roles, basically. Like there's a scene where it's William Catt, who plays Tommy from Carrie, reading a lot of these lines as Luke with Kurt Russell playing Han Solo.
Whoa.
And it's fascinating to see. Yeah. Just a
That's
little
awesome.
opening dimension. But some other people who
Mind-boggling.
auditioned for the part, apparently James Caan, Chevy Chase, Robert De Niro, Richard Dreyfuss, Robert Englund, Freddy Krueger
Oh,
himself, Steve Martin, Bill Murray, Jack Nicholson, Nick Nolte, Burt Reynolds, Sylvester Stallone, John Travolta, Glenn Turman, Christopher Walken, and a guy named Perry King. And apparently Pacino was offered the part, but declined because he did not understand the script. Which, to be fair, if you're Al Pacino in the 70s being handed the script, like, what the fuck is this? Whatever.
Yeah. Hey, at least it just wasn't Chevy Chase.
oh
Oh,
my
thank
God.
God it wasn't Chevy Chase.
Ew.
Yeah, for sure. Charlie, how do you feel about Ford?
I am delighted by him in this role. This is probably my favorite role of his. I completely agree with everything that Lily has said. He's so fucking charming in this. He he has scumbag swag, and I think that it works because you have the juxtaposition against Luke. So you have that sort of like skeptic and believer dynamic in the Force, in the cause, in all of these different things that it makes them an interesting pair to watch. And anytime that you're thinking, oh, maybe Solo is like too down on this. Maybe he's like a total bummer. He doesn't believe in the Force. I don't know if this is holding the movie together. You have Luke who's bringing it back, and he's like, I actually do believe, and you go back and forth in that sort of way. So I think that it really builds on their dynamic, and it sort of gives you a frame of reference as the audience for either way that you're leaning, or if you're right between. You get the different perspectives in the world, which helps out in the world building just by their performances.
a great example of that is when they're on the Death Star after they've taken the stormtrooper outfits. Luke finds out about, like, oh, the princess is trapped here. We gotta find her. And Han Solo's like, hell no, I'm not doing that. And Luke thinks about it for a second and is like, she is rich. She could give you a reward.
Yeah.
The fact that Han Solo, like, takes this thing of, like, well, it could be, and he's like, how much? And it's like, well, a lot more than you probably imagine. I can imagine a lot. Is like such a great like pinpoint of that kind of like cynicism versus the wider-eyed optimism for the two of them. Yeah, that's like perfect. But they are obviously trying to save Carrie Fisher as Leia, who is, it's interesting to talk about here because she had been in a couple other movies like Shampoo and stuff, but she was very fresh and obviously came from Hollywood royalty, being the daughter of Eddie Fisher and Debbie Reynolds. How do we feel about her in this movie, particularly the weird accent?
Okay, I was gonna ask about that. I was like, is this movie gaslighting me right now? Because I do not remember her having this accent at
No,
all.
yeah.
It's so funny to me.
Was that also added in when Lucas was fucking with it, or did I just misremember that entirely?
It's there in the original cut, and also it kind of goes in and out because it's like when you first see her with Darth Vader, she really leans into it, and then there's also the scene later with Peter Cushing's Grand Moff Tarkin. It's like, I recognized your foul stench when I was first brought on board. It's like, it's a bit kind of mid-Atlantic-y, and it's like, I don't know what this is. But then when they're on the Death Star, then they're all palling around. She's going into full, like, regular Carrie Fisher voice.
Right.
It's very weird, yeah.
I felt insane, because I totally did not remember this, and I'm like, they're messing with me. There is something wrong with I'm calling Amazon or Disney or someone. I don't know. I just need a reason to be mad at Jeff Bezos. But yeah, a little put off by that, but I do feel for her at this time, being, the burgeoning nepo baby that she was. And you probably do know that she was not allowed to wear a bra under her costume, and she asked George Lucas why she couldn't. And he's like, oh, well, they don't wear bras in space. Just very matter of fact, like as if this is something we all know because it's so established. I'm like, cool,
common fact.
Cool.
Yeah, clear part of canon.
Yeah. I read her autobiography back when it came out.
Oh.
Yeah.
And I don't remember a lot from it, but I do remember that she talked about the accent a little bit. And if I recall correctly, she said that they were like debating if she should do a British or American accent. And they recorded like some scenes with her doing the British accent and some scenes with the American accent. And it was supposed to be like redubbed or refilmed. Like either it was like a test scene or what. And that just wasn't the case. So that's why it's choppy. But that's her word. So I don't know if that's fully reliable as a way to justify the fact that she did a weird accent, or if that's the truth behind it.
I mean, given the post-production of this movie being infamously kind of rushed after they went over budget and over schedule with the filming, I could see that maybe being the case. That was an afterthought after a while. But at the same time, like, still watching, like, Fisher still, like, is so great in this part, despite that weird kind of wobbly accent element of it. I think particularly, like, she carries the kind of, like, the sort of regality of being this, like, diplomatic leader of sorts. Like, that's the whole reason that the message, the holographic message, works as well as it does and why it sticks with people so much. The help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope, and the whole message, like, really underlines, like, that kind of regality. And then the moment she's like, okay, you guys are trying to rescue me, cool, oh, there's stormtroopers, you guys are fucking inept, I need to, like, open up the trash chute thing so we can all fucking get out of here with our lives, for at least, like, to the next location or whatever. Like, you get the sense that, like, she's able to think on her feet, despite the fact that she had that initial kind of serious regality that we saw previously.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's actually afforded a lot more of an identity and personality and nuance than I think a lot of female characters in this genre are still afforded today. So I think she goes down in history as one of the best.
Yeah, I think that it's also interesting the fact that, like, in the general zeitgeist, what you get of her is just the help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope, and not the fact that she was a very competent female character who, once she got the inch of help, no, she got it from here. She'll take care of it.
Yeah, especially when you get to, like, her, like, walking around with them and just like, somebody get this walking carpet out of my way and stuff like that. It feels very, Feels very much like somebody who is in control and it's just like, thanks for the nudge, but I can like take it from here. And the fact that Han is so especially like offended by that, but also he's like, I'm beginning to like her a bit. Stuff like it's just like he's really responding to it in a very interesting way. Yeah, I love that. And even also that like Luke also has that weird thing where like when they're on the Millennium Falcon later and he's like, you ever think a princess and a guy like me? No, I don't. It's like, oh, Luke, you have no idea, by the way. Get ready, man. You're going to feel really weird about that in like a couple movies.
Oh, man.
But let's talk a bit about some of these other supporting people. Like we were talking about Obi-Wan previously, Alec Guinness, very much like the most respected actor getting involved here, who, by the way, very wisely was like, you know what, I'll have my general salary, but also I want 2.25% of the movie's back-ended gross.
Very smart.
Retirement plan. Just
Yeah.
perfect for him. But do we feel that he adds a kind of interesting gravitas to this movie, being like the seasoned English actor?
Totally.
Yeah.
I don't even feel the need to elaborate. He's there. It's done.
Well, especially next to these like kind of rookie kids who, some had acted before, but like they do feel a little bit like their character's a little unpracticed, and he's just like, okay, children, gather around. I'll tell you the tea. So yeah, he sometimes feels like he's on a stage and everyone else is in a movie.
No, that's very
that
true.
Serves it so well.
Yeah, especially when he is tasked with delivering a lot of like the crucial sort of context about like the Force and Jedis, all this like saying stuff about like the Clone Wars and shit like that, like stuff that I'm very sure this very esteemed British actor was like, the fuck is this shit? What are we fucking talking about here, George? This is so dumb. I fucking hate that I have to say all this shit, but he still delivers like his whole speech about the Force. Like it moves, it binds us, it's in every living thing. Or like the real emotional weight of stuff like that. It's as if I heard 1,000 voices being silenced all at once with Alderaan. Or the bit where it's just like, that's no moon. The reason those lines like work so well is because he puts like actual emotional weight into it, even though once again he's like on a stage. Like I'd recommend anybody watch the behind the scenes stuff for this movie, where you can clearly tell like on set footage is like everyone around George having the clear like, what is this fucking bullshit? Is this gonna work? Is this gonna, there's including one of my favorite outtakes of all time during the Death Star sequence. Our three leads. There's a scene where apparently they shot like 16 takes of it, of them like running through the Death Star hallways, and then like they walk by, and then everyone comes around and says like and someone's like, oh, the mic was in frame, and then Harrison Ford's like, the mic was in picture. The mic wasn't pictured. All three of them are really going into it, and George looks embarrassed, like so embarrassed by it. One of my favorite outtakes for a movie ever. It's so funny.
That's awesome.
But yeah, you get the sense that like Guinness has that kind of regality to him. Same thing, of course, with Peter Cushing, who at this time had been like, relegated to like kind of like the horror kind of Hammer stuff, but also just like really embodies, especially like his performance is so crucial for like all the different Imperial people to follow in this franchise, which I think is what's really interesting. You kind of mentioned this earlier, Lili, about the whole like, oh, this is like the first sci-fi movie in the 70s to really have like fun. And I feel like he's kind of the best example of like the sort of the themes that, maybe a few Star Wars fans don't really like gloss over their heads about, the kind of fascistic element of the Empire and how sort of especially like incredibly bold-faced and without any kind of deterrent they are to like their mission. These like Imperial assholes can be. Like I love Imperial assholes in these Star Wars movies. Like Richard Hermitier, I believe is his name, the guy who gets choked by Vader in the boardroom and stuff like that. Just like, oh, your ancient religion, whatever that is, doesn't matter to me, and then he gets choked out. But Cushing has that kind of like that full on like slimy, toady piece of shit kind of quality, but still at the same time a sort of regality that makes you think he's not that. He's not sniveling, like when he, like that comes up to him, like during the climax, just like, should we have your escape pod ready? Like, now, leave in my moment of triumph? I don't think so. That kind of thing, just like really digging into that kind of like authoritarian asshole vibe.
Yeah, you look at Peter Cushing and you're like, he's not the main villain. He's not the one that goes on to be in all. I mean, he just has such a striking look, voice, let alone like presence. It's crazy, terrifying.
It's like when you watch him, you can like see all of the performances that he has done before,
Hmm.
and that gives him such a strong and powerful energy that he's such a delight to watch on screen. And I feel like it pulls a sort of like level of camp from a completely different genre into this, where it's just palpable. Like you are watching him and you're like, okay, that guy is the worst, but in the best way.
Yeah, he does. It's interesting watching this, having watched like some of the Hammer Frankensteins, and like now
Yeah.
watching this for the first time since those. And it's like, oh yeah, it's the same kind of energy he has as Dr. Frankenstein. I'm just like, excuse me, are you doubting my ability to do this? I'm a pro at this, okay? Like, don't fuck with me. I'm well aware. Like this battle station, it'll like just completely decimate a planet. You see that? I fucked with your plan even though I didn't say I was gonna. That's right. Yeah, I'm gonna. You're far too trusting. All that kind of stuff. Just perfect, like sniveling guy that you're glad to see
Yeah.
blow up with everybody in the Death Star.
And he's the type of evil that doesn't even need to hide behind a mask, I mean,
No.
there's
Right?
scary for that too.
I mean, good transition, Lily, because we haven't talked about
Oh,
Darth Vader that much. Darth Vader played, notably, speaking to the Hammer horror stuff, a guy who played Frankenstein, at least one of those Hammer horror movies, David Prowse, in the suit. And originally on set, you can hear like an outtakes of his audio, and maybe to tease something that'll be talked about a bit later, he sounds like a Scottish version of like Rick Moranis' Darth Helmet. Like it's mystifying how like bad like it would be if they'd used David Prowse audio. So instead they went with James Earl Jones to overdub him, who goes uncredited in the original version of this movie.
wow.
I don't know. This is another thing. I'm just like throw it to you guys. How do you feel about Darth Vader? Is he like a good villain? I don't know. Is he a powerful cinematic villain that will live on in the test of time? I don't know, guys.
That's a hard one.
But yeah, how do we feel, especially like the introduction of Darth Vader here, just being kind of like what's interesting when you go back to this movie is that like he isn't really like the main bad. He's kind of just like the sort of the muscle for the mouthpiece of Tarkin
Yeah.
the whole time. It's just like the guy who Tarkin's like, this guy's fucking with me, Vader. You want to use like your magic doohickey or whatever? Make that guy choke? Yeah, do it. Like, how do we feel about him like kind of here compared to like his sort of iconic status later in the Star Wars movies?
Yeah, I did not remember his first appearance being so casual. Like it's kind of crazy considering where that character goes. Because I did think of him as like the main villain, obviously, but in this movie, like you said, he's really not, and he doesn't have that same presence that Peter Cushing does, or even just some of the other, Nazi looking dudes. Because you can't see his face, and I feel that maybe in some of the other movies that he could come off a little more menacing. But that being said, I love an instantly iconic, distinct aesthetic, a look, and he has it. I don't think I've seen anything as like instantly recognizable than like his mask or like a stormtrooper mask. Like if I had never seen any Star Wars, I would know who that was.
Yeah, I think that his sort of like casual appearances in this serve the film really well because since this is the first one, having a villain that you can see where it's like, okay, these are our Nazi types, we know that these are the bad guys, and then bringing in casually this guy who's cloaked in all black, the muscle who's super menacing, but just sort of there, it sort of builds you up to him being a greater villain. It gives you just like a little taste of what this could be, and it lets you sink into, oh, this guy has powers, there's a superimposing presence, without being like, hey, who's this guy in the costume? I don't know this. I don't care. How we're supposed to believe that this guy's threatening. So I think that it builds up in a very important and helpful way for future films, while also being something that you just can't replicate. They tried and failed so horribly when they tried to be like, we need a new Vader, and then they came up with Kylo Ren, which just doesn't have any of the swag. I'm so sorry to Kylo Ren enjoyers. But it's just not there.
Well, I think what's interesting is that like Kylo Ren's kind of trying to go for like a slightly different version of that, where he's a guy who wants to have that imposing quality, but he's really a fucking angry boy. Which I'll get into that later in the season. I'll get into Kylo Ren, and like I can't wait to talk about those sequels, and especially have people respond to it in theory. I can't wait. But but what I like about yeah, Vader here is that like he does kind of have that thing that you're talking, like this guy in the costume. That's his kind of reputation around, like when he enters the boardroom with Tarkin, all the other guys just like, oh fuck, it's this guy with the cape. Oh god. He's fucking walking in here and he's talking about like the Force thing and Jedis. Like what the fuck ever, man. Like look, we're trying to like run a fucking death ship that's gonna destroy planets. We don't need this fucking guy here, man, really? I don't know. Like there is that kind of thing, that kind of doubtfulness, but I like that Vader is like in this one in particular is much more like on the ground getting his hands dirty. Like when you first see him on that ship after like all the stormtroopers shoot all the other people, and he walks around like kicks like the dead bodies of these rebel folks around and like literally is like choking them out like up close and personal. And then later on when during the dogfight when he's in the ship, it's just like, all right, I guess I gotta fucking do this myself. I have my special cool TIE fighter that doesn't have like the two straight sides, it has like a circular sides because I'm cool. And I have to be the one to actually do this. Like he's getting his hands free, but even like his last appearance being like he gets shot and he like survives when he's tumbling around,
which is so funny.
It's so funny, and also you can just hear him say like, "Oh God, this is just gonna set me back. This sucks so much. I have to have a Zoom call with the Emperor after this. Like, fuck me."
He was just trying to meet his quota,
right? 100%. But that adds even something where like the fact that he senses Obi-Wan on the Death Star. It's like, no, you guys gotta like really check this Millennium Falcon ship. Like somebody's here. I can sense like this guy here. And the two of them have, of course, the original lightsaber battle, which I think a lot of people have commented, not especially extravagant, not a lot going on there, because you have, like, I don't know, a big stunt guy who's in a helmet that he can't see out of, and a classically trained British actor who doesn't have, like, maybe has fencing training from, like, the stage, but it's how do we feel, especially about some of these other elements that are, like, introduced here, like the lightsabers or the Force? Do we feel like this is like an interesting introduction in here, or does it feel kind of quaint by comparison?
It feels like an idea that they had, that they were like, I really want this to be in the movie, but I don't know where we should put it. Let's put it here, and then maybe we'll build on this in the future. And for that reason, I think it feels very quaint. It's very charming. It's enough that I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then I think that it probably had crazy toy sales that made it a more important part in the future.
That's very true. It does feel quaint to me, but I was trying to do like you were doing, Charlie, and just like imagine this is the only movie and this is the first time I've seen it, and it is like it's cool. The idea of it is a lot cooler than the execution in this first one, and the implications of it are very fun. And I mean, launched a 1,000 playground, injuries, I'm sure. And just like I can't think of, like, you've got characters and certain iconography from things that get traction and become toys and all these things, but I can't think of something that has like really stood the test of time. You don't need to know the movie at all to know what a lightsaber is. Like, I do not talk about Star Wars, but for Christmas I got lightsaber chopsticks from my mom that like light up. I'm like, well, that's sick. Because it's just, they knew they had a good idea, they just maybe didn't know how to fully realize it just yet. But then I'll also never forget watching that double, lightsaber come out for the first time. That was thrilling.
Right, of course, in episode 1, which will be talked about in the near future of this show. But yeah, I think what works too about not just the lightsabers, but even like the Force in general in this, is that it's treated much more as just like a self-actualization thing, a sort of like the way that Obi-Wan is training Luke this whole time is about like, no, you have to like trust your feelings, trust your gut, basically. Like, you don't have to look at the navigation port, which I remember as a little kid, like when I first saw this, the whole fact that he turns off the targeting computer, I'm like, what's he doing? No, he's got to turn that back on. He's got to hit the hole. Like the other guy missed. He didn't get in the hole. He's got to this guy's got to do it. And then he does it without, like, on his own instinct and without any kind of, like, technical assistance, I think it's like so key to, once again, the kind of, like, the young Luke kind of like learning to like trust himself in the middle of this like massive situation where once again this guy was like, I don't know, a couple days earlier was like on his farm with his aunt and uncle who had been murdered, and then he goes on a ship with this like weird wizard dude who becomes like his most trusted ally. That guy gets murked, and then he's like part of the Rebel Alliance, like, hey, you have to destroy the biggest weapon ever that destroyed a planet, which in this universe has never happened before. You have to like get the one little tiny laser point inside of this thing, this hole, and manage to get it to work. And yeah, it's that kind of insurmountable odds kind of thing that is just, you know, like the forces mainly just like you realizing like that you can trust in yourself and your ability to like do something that insurmountable. I think that's really smart because like from here on the force becomes like, oh, you can like fucking do backflips and all this other shit, and just having it be just like a much more intimate, once again, like no, trust your feelings kind of thing. I think is like I think it's a big underrated part of what made Star Wars a massive hit, that anybody can kind of relate to that specific idea.
Yeah, it's just space manifesting.
Right.
The secret, but in space.
Space aura.
Yeah.
or space aura farming. That's the farming Luke wanted to do.
Right.
Yeah.
By the way, you were talking about the merchandising thing. Are you guys aware of the infamous kind of like merchandising snafu the Christmas this movie came out?
Vaguely, maybe.
Yeah.
So when this movie came out, everyone was like, whatever, this is not going to be that massive hit. So they didn't make toys initially. And like Kenner was like the guy's sanction to be like, hey, we'll make toys eventually, but like we'll wait. I'm sure probably like we'll see how the movie does necessarily. And this movie was immediately a massive success. So Kenner was like, fuck, there's no way we can get toys out for Christmas. No way we can do that. So they literally had a thing go out in the stores that was like a cardboard little placemat that was like, hey, if you mail us this proof of purchase, we'll send you the entire set next Christmas.
What?
Yes.
I didn't know that part of it. I just knew that there was a mad rush to do something.
Right. All they really had were like t-shirts and posters and shit. They did not have toys immediately. Yeah. So they just had like this little card like, all right, we'll get these in time for you for Christmas 1978. But sorry, kid, we can't give them to you right now. We're still making them. We are rushing to get these done.
Jesus. It's also so opposite to how things are now. I feel like they're you're gonna see the merch whether the movie was a flop or not.
Oh, for sure. And then if that movie is a flop, you're gonna see all these toys at fucking Walgreens for like $1 forever. I can still go to my local Walgreens and get fucking a Star Wars story merch. But yeah, in terms of to get back to Star Wars: A New Hope, I mean, what would you guys say is your favorite sort of like set piece of this movie? What would you get like in terms of like when you think of like, oh, this movie and like what like sort of works about this original version of Star Wars? What's your favorite sort of like maybe either scene or set piece kind of thing that really like immediately gravitates toward your brain?
My first thought is the Falcon. Just like
I was gonna say the same thing.
Yeah, it's just so quintessential Star Wars. Just as a setting itself, the way that they designed it, the care and thought that they put into it, sort of what we were talking about earlier, it feels lived in. This feels like an actual ship that this scumbag would have. The fact that you have like all these practical elements of it hiding under the floorboards because he's a smuggler, like it all makes sense. I said earlier, I watched this for the first time when I was like 13, 14, which is still a child, but not as young as a lot of people were when they first saw it. Mm-hmm. But still, watching it, I'm like, I want to be in that ship. I want to pilot the Falcon. And watching it now, I want to be in that ship. I want to pilot the Falcon. So it's just the movie to me. The movie is the sort of experience of like, I want to go to there. And that's the place I want to go.
I mean, that's the thing. I remember when this last summer, I finally went to Galaxy's Edge over at Hollywood Studios Park for the first time. And I don't love that Millennium Falcon ride, but the queue of that ride, going through the Falcon, there was really
I feel the exact same way.
100%. And like, I remember I was with Brian, former co-host of the show, and you get past like the Hondo Inaka animatronic, which is cool. And we were just talking about some other bullshit in line. And then I was like, wait, shut up. I think we're in like the actual part of the Falcon. Like you see that hallway, the kind of weird styrofoam kind of like look to the hallway with the padding, and then you get into like the sort of the den area with the hollow chess board and everything. You're just like, yeah, I'm fucking here. This is so great. I don't give a shit. This ride's like whatever is screened, and then like you're kind of piloting, and maybe you actually get the mission done. Probably not. I don't fucking know. I wasn't really paying attention. There's not a lot interesting about the actual ride through, but that fucking queue, wonderful.
Yeah, I like the queue better than the actual ride.
110%. But yeah, I mean, especially with the Falcon, I think my favorite sequence in the Falcon is probably the right after they get out of the Death Star, and they're like, hold on, we gotta do the gunner ships. We gotta do like little gunners on the side. And I love the look of those gunners, and I love like Han and Luke both like doing a really good job, but like you can tell in clearly different ways. Like Han is, you know, in the way that like the Falcon works, it's just like everything's kind of a rust buck. He's gotta like hit it to like really get it to work and all that kind of stuff. It is a hunk of junk. But like the way that he's doing it versus Luke is much more traditional. Like, oh man, this is so cool that I'm almost doing this, and the whole like, great kid, don't get cocky, all that stuff. I think is like so perfect, especially that you also have Leia and Chewie in the hangar, the actual like piloting hangar, and they're both just like hug each other. We did it! It's like, it's so great. I love all that shit.
Same.
But Lily, do you have another sequence that like really like spotlights to you?
I do really like when they first get inside the Millennium Falcon. I like any sort of spaceship that feels like you could live in it. Like it's got a it's not like chrome and cold and like sharp edges. It feels like feels like an RV or something. It feels like almost like Howl's Moving Castle. Like there's bits and bobs everywhere, and that's what I love. Like I was saying about the old ideas of what the future looked like. This feels like the most realistic, dare I say, to what it is or could be, with like, we want things to be chic and sleek, but in practice, if you're actually like driving a smuggling ship or whatever, like it's gonna be messy. It might as well have some tacky bumper stickers on the back. And I love it. I just think it feels right and correct for these two characters too. It's like that's like the third part of Han and Chewie's posse kind of, to me. So I love it.
Right, especially if you once again go to canon and that the Millennium Falcon is actually has sentience and has like a trapped droid or whatever personality in there. Yeah, we don't have to think of that. I choose not to think about that because that's much more existentially terrifying. It also makes me question a lot of like any time Lando was in that ship, like is he fucking the ship because he wanted to fuck that droid?
That's why the walls are plush.
No, what? This is crazy.
It's so weird, fucking Solo Star Wars story. But I think for me, the sequence is like, it's really like all the stuff when they're on the Death Star. I mentioned before that kind of is a synthesis of all the stuff that Lucas had done previously, but also this ship looks so intimidating and has like the kind of like space future sci-fi stuff. But you have like these kids basically. Like Han Solo's a bit older than like Luke and Leia, but you have that kind of thing of like they're thinking on their feet and they're trying to face off against like a giant empire that has this planet destroying ship. And you have stuff like the calm thing with Han Solo, just like, we're fine here. How are you? And stuff. It's like he's barely able to like keep whatever charisma he can under this kind of pressure. And then they're going into the trash compactor. The trash compactor is like such a great example of like the kind of horror elements coming into it, with like this creature that you don't even see much of, just like a little eye and like a tentacle. It, like grabs Luke, the tension that's there when Luke is underwater for a while. And then maybe my favorite comedy bit in this whole movie is when they're about to be crushed, and then C-3PO's like, oh, I forgot to turn on the comm link, and then he turns it back on, and Luke's like, come on, you gotta turn it off, and they turn it off, and they're successful, and they're cheering, and then C-3PO on the other side is like, oh, listen to them, they're dying, oh, if I was so slow, oh, no.
Oh my god, so dramatic.
So good. We haven't mentioned him, but Anthony Daniels plays C-3PO, notably the only guy I think who has been in every single theatrical Star Wars movie up to this point. But also Kenny Baker's in the R2-D2 outfit, and Peter Mayhew as Chewbacca. I love his story about how he auditioned for the role, which was like he was in the offices sitting down, and then George walked in, and he's like, I'm a British gentleman, so I stood up, and then George looked at me, looked over to his producer, and said, like, I think we got it. and that's how he got the part.
Wow.
I think this movie also really made me appreciate suit performers like them and David Prowse, all these other people that, like, there is an art to, like, being inside, like, these uncomfortable suits and making you feel for these characters. Like, even, like, Kenny Baker has the biggest thing, where, like, he's this garbage can, basically. And he's got to infuse, like, some kind of, like, character in it while he's in there. And you can feel it in R2-D2, like, the bit where they're bought by Uncle Owen, and he's kind of, like, jumping on both feet, where he's just like, oh, that one R2-D2 droid, like, ended up blowing up. It's bad motivator. And he's almost giddy, and he's, like, jumping from side to side. Like, there's a lot of character, despite the fact that you're once again just so compromised in these suits. And Chewie's the same thing. I love that Chewie has, like, so much character in his movements, and even the way that he moves his mouth to, like, say whatever sound effects. Like, you still feel a lot of character, like, come through that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the only other big thing we haven't talked about here is the trench run. That feels like another big iconic sort of Star Wars thing. And it's a big shout out to, like, we should mention the incredible work that, like, ILM was built for this movie. Because George Lucas originally tried to get with, like, Fox about, like, oh, hey, do you have a special effects department? They're like, no, we don't. Because at this time, you know, we should mention this is a movie that comes at, like, near the tail end of the New Hollywood era, when movies are much more, like, intimate and, like, much more Earth-based. And so a special effects department wasn't really needed anymore at that point. So he built ILM with, like, a bunch of people like Dennis Muren, Joe Johnston, future director of, like, The Rocketeer and stuff, a bunch of other, like, great people in the effects industry, who had only done, like, commercials and stuff, and had built, like, architectural models. And it's like, hey, we're going to throw you into the deep end of, like, create all these worlds. Create, like, the Millennium Falcon and the TIE Fighters and the X-Wings and stuff. How do we feel about, especially, like, some of those... What's your favorite kind of, like, either ship or design that, like, you see from, like, these models?
I'm, like, of course, what's coming to mind is the Family Guy version. So let me recalibrate and think of the real... I will say, when I was doing some research for this, there's a Reddit thread called "The Death Star Trench Run was unnecessary," and then some nerd proceeds to talk about, like, technically they could have gone straight down toward the vent and fired straight into, whatever. And it's just one of those annoying things where it's like, do you not realize that the journey is the destination, my friend? Like, this is one of the most thrilling moments in the movie, and it's such a culmination of all the characters we met so far and some other friends. And I'm like, if we don't have that, we don't have, like, as thrilling of a climax. What do you mean?
Lily, are you accusing the Star Wars fan base of being pedantic and shitty?
No, I would
I can't believe you would say such a thing.
For fear of my life, I would simply never.
I mean, genuinely, probably, yeah, that's a good idea, yeah. But yeah, I always, like, am baffled by that. It's like, sure, we could not have fun. That's cool. Right. We could not have fun. That's fine. But let's not have fun. That's not what Star Wars is about. Star Wars is not about fun.
This whole movie could have been an email if you'd like, but, we're going on an adventure if you're down for that.
It's just so, I don't want to say fun again, but it's so fucking fun. It builds the anticipation for the finale. You feel like you are there with them, and you're like, okay, are they going to do it? Even though you know how the story ends, you still get caught up in the moment and the anxiety and the tension, and it's just, it makes the movie. It makes that ending work, and it gives you a reason to accept the celebration at the end.
Yeah, it really helps to have, like, the various different X-Wing fighters, like, get blown up and stuff, like, along the way, that you get the real tension, including R.I.P., my boy Porkins, who, George, you had to name the fat guy Porkins. George.
That was a family name.
Yeah.
That's true.
Very, very J.K. Rowling of him.
Right. 100%. You could have, like, Big Star Killer, who's Luke's buddy that's in here with a mustache and shit, but who has a cool name, but, like, you get the William Hootkins, the character of Porkins. Just come on, George.
Have some class.
Right, but then you have, like, those guys get picked off one by one, and you have it be just, like, Luke is truly, like, on his own. Like, the only guy who survives is the guy who's like, oh no, my exhaust port or whatever screwed up, I have to leave. Even R2-D2 is gone for the final battle. Like, that's something I always forget about. The R2 gets, like, completely fried, like right before Luke is supposed to do anything, so he is completely on his own. Like really escalates the tension. I always also forget how short of a segment that is. Because I usually remember as a kid of being like, oh, it's like this big epic grand thing. It's like maybe 10 minutes of screen time to have that whole thing. And for the record, I think my favorite ship design of these, when I was a kid, I always loved the X-Wings, which is what the Rebel fighters use. I always love those, especially if they open up as they like take off and they fly off. But as I've gotten older, I really love the fucking TIE fighters, especially they make the best sound when they're like swooshing by. I always love like the TIE fighters. But yeah, do you guys have a favorite ship that's in here? Is it the Falcon? Are we just gonna say the Falcon, or is there?
I actually want to bring up the land speeder.
Yes.
I really liked the design for the land speeder, which is Luke's little ship at the beginning, because it feels like a car. It feels like a car that a teenager would have and drive around. So for that being essentially the first ship that we're seeing go around, I think that it acquaints you with the world and how things are different, but also the same. And it's a really cool and fun design, and I would like one.
Yeah, it feels like a little leftover American Graffiti vibes, but brought to
Very
space.
much.
It's like a classic car.
Yes. I also love like the points where just to show like the ingenuity once again of like there's a shot where like after Luke has seen his aunt and uncle as horrifying skeletons, which by the way also for this movie some fucked up shit like that or the arm getting chopped off and having blood. There's some upsetting imagery in here that feels I believe was kind of a thing where like it was originally got a G and then George was like let's have some more fucked up shit to kind of get up to a PG rating. At the very least with that kind of stuff. But there's the point when he comes back over to like where the Jawas had been executed, and Luke gets off this land speeder, and the camera is on the land speeder, and it bobs up and down, which is like such a crucial little detail that it's like, oh, that makes it feel like it's actually hovering.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
By the way, in terms of ships, also, I love the Jawa sand barge thing, that giant ass thing that like all the droids are in. I love the look of that thing. But what about you, Lily? Is there another kind of like ship or like land vehicle that you really like in this?
I like both intimidation and silliness of the Death Star because it's just like oh sure, we'll just go with our first thought, best thought, and make it a giant, golf ball or whatever with a very vulnerable spot in it. That
Right.
makes sense design wise. Yeah, but I think I will go with the Falcon because it just feels like someone's RV out in space, and I feel safe when we're in that.
Yeah, plus the outside of it looks really great, where it's got like kind of like almost a satellite dish kind of look to it, but it also, but it's got like little like ports in front. There's kind of like a bit of personality to it. Yeah, that really works for it. We didn't really talk about. I mentioned the Jawas earlier, but some of the like the Jawas, the Tusken Raiders. It's interesting how you see some of these figures who, I think it was Blank Check talked about this, that like Star Wars is very interesting where like George has some things that feel like they could be kind of offensive, like the Tusken Raiders are referred to as sand people. It's very important that like those characters in like the original trilogy in particular don't talk, as opposed to later on a lot of these stereotypes do talk and have English dialogue, and particularly certain accents that are like, oh, George, that's not what we should probably do. It's a lot better to have like the Houdini thing that like the Jawas say, or the weird elephant style grunts that like the Tusken Raiders are saying. It gives you a bit more distance.
I like the Jawas. I like I don't know, anything that is a fun creature that looks harmless but is not. I mean, I guess they don't look entirely harmless, but there's a lot of mystery to them. In their little cloaks and stuff. And yeah, I think they're fun. I think all the little, so many Star Wars nerds are going to be mad I'm belittling them to critters, but all the critters I think are very fun. Okay, thank you, Charlie.
Yeah, I would also refer to them as critters. You're in a safe space here, don't worry.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I have a friend who like calls them little guys. And he's like a huge Star Wars nerd, even more so than myself. And he says that one of the best things about Star Wars is all the little guys. And I am a Jar Jar Binks hater. And he loves Jar Jar Binks. And I'm like, how can you love Jar Jar Binks? And he says it's because he too is just a little guy. So
Even though he's a very tall guy, actually, he's a bit taller than even Liam Neeson in that film.
Oh my god. He's the little guy that stepped up though, you know? He
Right.
really had his moment.
Right. Yeah, I mean there are plenty of little guys in here with like I love that Jawa's also like there's no facial features, that they're just like two little dots inside of those cloaks for their eyes and stuff like that. But another one of like the little guys, speaking to the droids at least in there, my man the Gonk droid, who is the droid that inside of the bar, just like he looks literally like a trash can, even more so than fucking R2D2. He's literally like a rectangular trash can looking guy who's just like walking around like that guy. He just needs a home. I'd take the Gonk droid. I'm sure he doesn't do a lot, but like I love to have him around. This is at least like a pet. He's so adorable. He's just a trash can with legs. I love him.
Oh, I love that.
Or there's also like even the mouse droids as well. They're on the.
I was
Death
just
Star.
about to say I really like the mouse droids.
Yeah.
I actually have a mouse droid.
Oh, so. Like a little like remote control one?
Yeah, like a statue of one.
Oh, sick.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that you could actually get there, like, oh, they like would fit more, like if the actual size appropriate version, like to scale from the film. It's like that fits your home as opposed to like, what am I gonna do with like an R2D2 that's like actual size? What am I gonna do with this thing? Just gonna stand in a corner?
Yeah, the mouse droid has working wheels, so like you can push that shit around. It's real fun.
Hell yeah. Rad. I guess there's some other like bigger thing, like Greedo, of course. When Han encounters him, Greedo shooting first. One of the big controversies of the special editions. Of course, that Han originally shot him first, and in all the special editions, they have to work really around the idea that he didn't shoot him, to the degree that if you see it in the special editions, they literally like they digitally move Harrison Ford's head to make it like jerk to the left so he doesn't get shot.
Did you know if you Google Greedo shot first, it says, "Did you mean Han shot first?"
Oh, very nice.
So even the gods are aware.
Yes, the gods of Google.
Yeah.
But I do love that whole sequence. I think that's enough to give you the idea of like, oh, Han is being like chased after by some like space gangster named Jabba, as opposed to in the special edition we have to have Jabba show up, a very bad CG Jabba, for a scene that was shot with the idea of it being like some sort of like stop motion creature replacing the human that was there. And on top of it being like just a bad CG thing, it's also completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
So unnecessary.
Yeah, what is the most annoying like special edition to you guys?
Oh god.
In this specific film or
in this specific film?
Yeah, it's gonna be Jabba for me. It just looks so fucking bad.
I was gonna say the same because I don't listen. I'm clearly not like I don't know all of the details and lore, but it doesn't even look like he's the right scale he should be. The way they just superimposed him, like chilling by the Millennium Falcon or whatever. It's like I don't know. I guess I'll have to tune in and meet his jacked son or cousin Jeremy Allen White or whatever the fuck they're about to do. And see how he sizes up, but it just feels it sticks out like a sore thumb. And again, I'm not trying to drag George Lucas, but it's like if you're gonna go back and do that, then go back and fix Harrison Ford's lines. Like have him say "I love you too" or whatever he was supposed to. You know what I mean? But he could recognize the artistic value and like significance of those little magical things that happen by accident. Why can't he just let the things be on their own?
Well, especially like in that sequence, the worst addition is the fact that Han like walks around him like from the back, and they clearly had to make up for like the tails, so they digitally have him like go awkwardly up and down, and it's just like
so weird.
That sucks. That's so stupid.
So bizarre.
So annoying.
I was showing the movie to my boyfriend for the first time because he hadn't seen them until very recently, and when it got to that part, I turned to him and I said, "I'm sorry. Like I'm the one who put it there," because I felt so much shame. By that point, we were like too far in for me to switch back over to like the despecialized version I have. So like, fuck, we're just riding with this now. Why did I do this? Yeah, no, it's awful. It's embarrassing.
It sucks because like it's really like a lot of the stuff around like Tatooine and Mos Eisley, because it's that. And it's also the when they first show the shot of like, oh, you're going to Mos Eisley, and they're like on the land speeder, and they have to add in all like once again the do bags and the like the robot that like hits a floating robot, and those giant like weird camel things that are like where Jawa like falls off and stuff like that. It's like this doesn't really add a lot. Like when you watch the original version, it's just like, oh, there's like a couple ships and some droids and some like humans in weird outfits walking around. Like that's enough. You don't really need like all this other bullshit. It's just all like ornamental and stupid.
I know it feels like the visual equivalent of like showing someone your favorite movie and pausing every 5 minutes, be like, okay, so the context behind this is actually, it's like, hey, buddy, just let me live in the movie. If I have questions after, I'll let you know. You know, it's like just let it be, George.
Yeah. But I mean, before we get to like any final thoughts or stuff like that, I do want to talk about, we talked about the trench run, but the ending for this movie with the medal ceremony, I think, is like one of the raddest endings ever in a movie. I think it's just like the way that the score really gets in. We haven't talked that much about the fucking John Williams score, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Holy shit. But
I don't think any of us can say anything that hasn't been said about that beautiful, beautiful score.
True. But I think like my favorite bit of score in this movie is this sequence. Just like the triumph of it, our guys getting their medals, Leia giving the little looks to like Luke and Han, who is just like, yeah, right? Yeah, huh?
Yeah.
Can't believe I did that. And she's like, sure, buddy, yeah. And then Luke looking very earnest, and the little shots of like R2D2 and C3PO. It's a perfect kind of like curtain call for this movie.
Yeah.
To have and that final big shot where, of course, Chewie gives the final kind of roar and doesn't get his medal, which has been a source of consternation for many a Star Wars fan.
Yep.
Chewie deserved a medal. We're all in agreement on this, right? Chewie deserved a medal.
Yes.
Right.
Perhaps even 2.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, really. Yeah. And of course, but we were all so happy and satisfied in Rise of Skywalker when Maz Kanata gave him that medal. We were all happy then, right? We were all so happy that happened. I'll take your silence as like a complete confirmation that you were very happy and tears rolling down your face, as they were throughout Rise of Skywalker, for great reasons. For just like incredibly satisfied reasons.
Yeah, happy tears for sure.
Happy tears, yeah. That
I
happened.
do like that ending bit though, because it feels like they really earned it. They deserved that little moment after going through so much trauma and stress. And you know, I always feel like in movies where it's about getting prepared for a thing, rehearsing for a thing. The only example I can think of is like High School Musical. So much is about a damn musical that we never see. It's the audition, it's the callback, it's the like classroom practices, and that's all fine and good, but I want to see what this is all leading to. And this feels like a version of that, where it's like we get to see them like reap the benefits of this and have like peace after this. It's not just like ending with them sweating and out of breath, having defeated the enemy. So I like it. It's a nice little conclusion.
This would have been better though if they had all sang "We're all in this together."
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Maybe that's our note that we can make about the score.
Yeah.
Right.
Not enough opportunities to sing along.
Yeah.
Come on, John. Yeah, where was that? You got your jizz music in there, but you couldn't get the big musical numbers in. Come on.
Yeah. Let's figure this out. Let's release another edited version.
Oh my god.
That's true, because that's what we're all clamoring for after. Once again, like I mentioned this earlier, but the surprise everyone had when like all these movies were uploaded on Disney Plus, and like the McClunky thing that Greedo says, that's the last imprint that George had on any Star Wars thing. Because that's the most recent change that he made. That was his final like swan song to the Star Wars property. He just got $4 billion for selling, was that little McClunky. I just find that kind of cute. We should also note that this movie was very rewarded at the time when it came out at the Academy Awards. It won awards for Best Art Direction, Costume Design, Editing, Score, Sound, Visual Effects, and had 2 like honorary awards: a Special Achievement for Sound Design and Scientific and Engineering Award. And then it was also nominated for Screenplay, Supporting Actor for Alec Guinness, Director for Lucas, and Best Picture.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's also very interesting considering it lost some of those major awards to Annie Hall. A decision that I'm sure that really has held up in the Academy's eyes.
I'm sure.
Yeah, very much so. But yeah, it is fascinating how this movie does just truly, like, kind of was so rewarded, so successful at the time, and really just paved the way for what we have now over the last 50 years in blockbuster culture, for, better or worse. But does anyone have any final thoughts on Star Wars: A New Hope before we get to our sort of ending segments?
Good movie.
Whoa, bold take.
Yeah, it's just a fun time. And I'll say, since I'm not as big of a sci-fi nerd or Star Wars nerd, it's like you can watch it and enjoy it completely on its own. You don't have to dive into the rest, but it does really prime you for the rest of the series. It is like it couldn't have begun with any other one. You know what I mean? It just is the perfect recipe and ingredients.
Yeah, I think I'll close out by at least saying that, like, I agree that it's such an incredible movie, and it's so fascinating when you consider a lot of the challenges this movie had. Like, I have in here that, like, the reason this movie went over budget and behind schedule was, amongst several other things I am not even listing here, when they shot in Tunisia for Tatooine, so many weather delays. They had, like, rain and sandstorms that caused multiple props to malfunction. The C-3PO suit constantly consternated Anthony Daniels to the point where he was, like, getting, like, severe scars on his legs and arms. George did not know how to direct actors that well. Famously, they would all say that the only direction he ever gave was really faster and more intense. That was his main note every single time. The cinematographer Gilbert Taylor, who had worked on, like, a lot of other big movies, was very, like, frustrated with George not knowing how to, like, use, like, big lighting or camera techniques, and there was constant, like, back and forth between the two of them. The editing team started editing when, like, the first footage came in from Tunisia, but didn't get really any kind of concrete stuff from George about, like, what is this movie? And, like, how do we, like, put it together? Mark Hamill got into a car accident near the end of production, which caused him to not really be in reshoots that much. Several effects had to be redone due to just inexperience with, like, what George's plans were. Like, the original ILM tests came in, he was like, no, we have to redo all this. It's like, George, we spent, like, months doing, like, this limited footage that you're already seeing. And all of this ended up delaying the movie from, it was originally supposed to come out in Christmas of 76. And there's a teaser trailer you can see this is coming, Christmas 1976, that ended up being completely shot off to, like, Memorial Day 1977, and they had to, like, get more money from Fox. And it was all this, like, conversation. George had to literally, like, go into the hospital, and he was diagnosed with, like, hypertension and too much fucking stress from, like, dealing with this. And yeah, you think with all that, like, oh, this movie's gonna, like, fucking flop. There's no way it's gonna work. And it did not. I should note, the gross on Star Wars currently, with all the re-releases and everything, is $774.4 million.
Jesus Christ.
Easily, like, one of the highest grossing movies even without adjusting for inflation. But
Wow.
yeah, it's so fascinating when you consider all that stuff that went into that movie, and it completely paid off. So I share Charlie's hot take of, I will stand tall and say Star Wars 1977 is a good movie.
Yeah.
A very good movie.
Absolutely.
Thank you for standing in solidarity.
Not all heroes wear capes.
Sometimes it's only the villains.
Right, exactly. Yes. But now, it's time to get into our usual segment, Between the Lines. So in every episode of Cinema to the Letter, myself and my guests will recommend another film that, either fits into the letter criteria for, like, C for classic in this case, or is tangentially related to the movie that we're covering in some way. But for this particular season, I've opened up Between the Lines. We're extending it to include other Star Wars media to be included. So if you have a TV show, a special, some dumb, obscure pop culture bullshit that's related to Star Wars you want to recommend, if it's Star Wars adjacent, it's totally eligible. But for my first pick of this season, I'm going to go for a movie that influenced Star Wars in many ways. I'm going to be talking about the 1956 film The Searchers, directed by John Ford, which was very influential in a lot of ways for Star Wars. I think particularly with this movie, if you don't know out there, it stars John Wayne as a man who is a Civil War veteran who comes back home to his brother's house, where he has a little family for himself. That includes his wife and 3 children. While Wayne is over there, that he ends up in the middle of a kind of mission that like leads him away from the home, alongside his nephew Jeffrey Hunter. They all are like dragged out from the homestead, thinking that like, oh, the Comanche tribe is going to be attacking outside, and they find out, oh, wait a minute, this is actually a diversion. They come back home and it's been completely decimated. And that sequence was very influential on, as we kind of mentioned, the Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen scene from this, where they're discovered. Very influential for Star Wars there. But there's also some other interesting things I want to mention that are kind of influential. Like when John Wayne arrives, he notes that he has a saber, which is his sword from the war. But he specifically identifies it as a saber. His traditional, I should mention, Confederate outfit looks very similar, particularly in the pants, to Han Solo, with like the yellow stripe in particular. Looks a lot like it. And I'll also say, I kind of mentioned earlier about like the Tusken Raiders and the Jawas. This movie has some, I'll just say charitably problematic depictions of the Comanche tribe in it. That, you know, I've seen a lot of people decry this particular movie that's been very hailed as like one of the best westerns and all this other stuff. Decry it because of those certain depictions, and I don't blame anybody for feeling that way necessarily. There's a lot of uncomfortable elements to this movie, as there are with like a lot of the Western genre. But I'll say this movie, at the same time, I think has a lot of interesting subversive merit to it for a Western of the time. I think particularly John Wayne, who is such a figure I exclusively identify as like, oh, that is like old man Western, like typical like Republican bullshit kind of thing. That character. In this movie, I think is depicted in a much more interesting moral gray way, where he definitely is like treated as some kind of hero, but also a hero with a lot of rage and a lot of anger that a lot of people rightfully are like angry at him for being. Like Jeffrey Hunter and him have a very interesting dynamic in that movie that I think is really like has a lot more depth to it than a lot of westerns of the era, and I think is, of my limited, admittingly, John Wayne stuff that I've seen, I think he's incredible in that movie. And just has just a lot, like I said, rage in that performance. Just so much like anger built up that feels a lot more developed than a lot of other Western heroes would be. And also, given John Ford, this is one of the most beautiful looking movies ever made. The way that he shoots Monument Valley, which is the traditional kind of like California desert area that a lot of Westerns were shot in, it looks so beautiful. There are so many giant vista shots that are like spellbinding, especially I watched it on my 4K television. And it is just an incredible achievement of cinematography, this movie. Like I said, it has like some interesting elements that have aged in like lesser ways than others, but I also think some of the comedy doesn't work as well. But I think of the Western genre, it has a lot more interesting ideas that it's playing with, and particularly, a lot of people have said this, but the final shot of this movie is one of the best final shots in a movie ever. I won't say it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but I think it's an incredible, kind of like really interesting opening to like what would later be with like the revisionist Western genre, which is kind of like my preferred version of the Western. I think it's stellar stuff. I think there's a lot of incredible craft in this movie, and yeah. Have you all seen The Searchers?
I haven't seen it in full.
I
Okay.
haven't seen it, but don't take away my cinephile card.
Well, I need that and your badge and your gun, and you have to leave the force immediately.
Not my gun.
I mean, I'd be very curious about what you all, especially, I'm guessing, are either of you fans of like the Western genre?
I actually very much am.
Okay.
Oh.
Just to keep you on your toes.
I listened to the Turner Classic Movies podcast. They did a season on John Ford, and so I
Right.
learned a lot about the making of that movie, and I'm definitely fascinated. I just haven't gotten around to doing it. I think I am unfortunately put off by, Hello Pilgrims, John Wayne, but I can get past that, especially if he's playing like a little more nuanced of a character. I'm super curious.
Yeah. Also, a weird bit of trivia that connects specifically to John Wayne with Star Wars. You know the character in this who's like the weird kind of like elephant nosed guy who like ends up ratting out where the Millennium Falcon is to the stormtroopers?
Oh,
That
yeah.
was John Wayne.
Uh, the thing is, apparently Ben Burt used like some audio recordings of John Wayne for the weird voice there. It's heavily
No
synthesized.
way.
But apparently that's like audio recordings of John Wayne, so that elephant guy is saying like Pilgrim, but like heavily digitized, I guess.
Fuck, my bit stumbled into being the truth.
Don't you hate that when your bit becomes reality?
Yeah. That's awesome.
Lily, go ahead with your recommendation for Between the Lines.
Well, I do like sci-fi. I don't know if I've explored the genre as much as I should for how much I do like it. I tend to stick with what I like. And I love the way that it's been modernized and, captures the paranoia and fear of every time while like carrying through this like mutual, fear of authoritarianism, which is valid, and existential dread, like I said earlier. So naturally, the most refined sort of follow up to Star Wars is Spaceballs.
Yeah.
And this is, I'm gonna say confidently, I did see this before Star Wars. So you would think, like, why would I have any interest or find it entertaining at all if I don't know the subject material? It did not matter. I thought and think it's hilarious. I am obsessed with Mel Brooks, and I think that Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein are two of the greatest comedies of the last century, and Spaceballs is such a fun meal of a comedy spectacle. It's got a little bit of everything, and it so has its finger on the pulse of the culture at the time, the budding like fandom first sort of mentality, and like making fun of the most ridiculous parts of not just Star Wars but other science fiction movies, a little bit of like Alien in there and Star Trek and Planet of the Apes and 2001: A Space Odyssey, but it's just so funny. I mean, the fact that John Candy is the Chewbacca and his character's name is Barf, the fact that I think I'm a little bit biased because my dad and my grandpa growing up would speak in Yiddish, and so I just find Yiddish to be hilarious, and the fact that there is a Dr. Schlotkin and the thing instead of the horse is called the Schwartz. I just think that shit's funny. The fact that instead of yoga it's yogurt, like, come on, it's stupid for sure, but it's also so perfect, and no one was doing parody quite like Mel Brooks at that time, and I think anything since is greatly inspired by it. But just the cast alone: Mel Brooks, John Candy, Rick Moranis, Bill Pullman, Daphne Zuniga, Dick Van Patten, Michael Winslow, the voice of Joan Rivers, John Hurt, Stephen Tobolowsky. The fact that someone's name is Major Asshole, like, I don't know. I don't, I don't need my space age operas to be highbrow. And I love the fact that we can make that, but I also love the fact that we can make fun of this shit too. And I just think it's so elegantly done for being so stupid. I think Rick Moranis is weirdly like so serious in his role that it comes across even funnier. And I also love the fact that George Lucas was in on it and totally like down for most of it, but he just told Mel Brooks, like, well, you can't have action figures made because your stuff is going to look too much like mine. And that was like one caveat he was going to have, is like, you're not going to have, barf merch, which is funny because I don't know if there would have been a big market for that in the first place. Maybe now in like a memorabilia Comic-Con sense that would be great, but I don't think the demand was there at the time. So it's funny that he was like, not my merchandising rights, you're not going to touch my my microplastics. But it's it's just a really fun, I doubt there's any Star Wars fan who hasn't at least heard of it, but if you're someone who takes this franchise and these characters very seriously, I would recommend, kind of taking it less seriously and kicking back and having fun with Spaceballs, because I just think it's a fun time. And like in the spirit of A New Hope, it's good to just have fun with a ragtag crew of people sometimes. So
Lily, I have a very specific childhood memory of like when I was deep in my Star Wars phase. My father told me like, well, there's this movie that's kind of like a comedy of Star Wars called Spaceballs. We should watch it. And I remember watching it and very distinctly thinking like, how can he get away with this?
Yeah.
How is this possible? How could you take this holy text and make such great fodder out of it?
Look at how they desecrated my boy.
It wasn't even that. It's just like I was very much enraptured and loved it. I thought it was so funny, but I was just like, I can't believe someone had the balls to do that, the space balls.
Yeah.
To do such a thing. And it was the first Mel Brooks movie I ever saw, and that definitely opened the door. Especially, there's that scene, one of my favorite scenes in that movie, where they show just like, well, we have the movie on tape already.
Yeah.
And we can like get it, and there's like the whole library, and it's like, oh, it's all Mel Brooks, like movies like Blazing Saddles and Silent Movie and shit. But yeah, that was the first exposure to him, and that made me fall in love. And I would say that's probably the last like really great Mel Brooks movie. No offense to like Robin the Men in Tights is fun, and so was like Dracula Dead and Loving It, but that's like I think the last really good one. And I would still I watched it like a couple May the 4th ago. And I would say that movie still largely holds up with a lot of its jokes. I think it's really on the strength of like Bill Pullman there. It's so weird how he kind of has the same Harrison Ford energy, because he was also, that was very early in his career. And he has that same kind of like swagger, but it's all like for such stupid fucking lines. Like, we're not just in this for the money. We're in it for a shitload of money.
Yeah,
stuff like that.
He's so good. And I mean, also this is my little kid brain, but I was like, that's Uncle Buck. He's unrecognizable. And like, they literally just have like a tiny bit of makeup over his eye, but something about it transforms him. But everyone's so good in that.
And plus he's, he's half man, half dog. He's a Mog. He's his own best friend. Right. Yeah, I have a lot of this movie like very memorized from just watching it too many times. Yeah, for sure. But Charlie, have you seen Spaceballs?
I actually haven't. I've seen bits, but I haven't seen it in full. Sorry, I'm a purist. I'm just kidding.
You're very upset that anyone would desecrate Star Wars' name.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I actually have major beef with Mel Brooks because I take my monsters very seriously, and I can't imagine he would ever do such a thing to Frankenstein and Dracula.
That's true. How dare he do that?
Fair enough.
How dare he?
With one of the great comedy masterpieces of all time. Fuck him for doing that. How dare he? I will add, Lily, you mentioned the whole thing of like, oh, there's no merchandise. I will say I have one of my prized possessions that I got from a Comic-Con was there was a guy who was selling like recreations of props, and he was selling a recreation of one of the action figures that Darth Helmet has in his collection. I have a little Darth Helmet.
Wait, that's awesome.
My mantle, which is also probably the funniest thing Rick Moranis does in that movie when he's playing with the action figures, and he's just like, "Oh, your helmet is so big." So good.
He was having too much fun doing that.
So funny. Yeah, great stuff. Charlie, what is your recommendation?
So my recommendation is Barbarella, Queen of the Galaxy. This film came out like a decade or so before Star Wars, and I think that I don't want to give too much away about it in case folks haven't seen it, but I think that if you like the atmosphere of Star Wars, if you like this sort of like funky, grimy, weird space shit, it's a movie to watch. I think you can see a lot of sci-fi in our conceptions of like sci-fi in film from Barbarella, which is an adaptation of like a very horny French graphic novel. And this movie also feels like a very horny French graphic novel. So I really love it. It's really delightful. Jane Fonda plays Barbarella, and she's absolutely fantastic in the role. Some people think that the film is like objectifying women and like sexualizing them, and it's not feminist. I argue it's a very, very feminist movie, and that she kicks ass. So I recommend checking it out. If nothing else than for the vibes, though it's pretty funny, has a good score, and it's just a good time all around.
Yeah, I have seen Barbarella, not until fairly recently. Last year I finally watched it. I remember I avoided it for a while because I thought like, oh, is this going to be kind of like cheesy and too kitschy for me? And then watching it just feels kind of like the space equivalent of like the Adam West Batman show, where it's just like, oh, this is funny. This is like it's a genuinely funny movie. Especially like it's right before 2001, so it's much more in the kitsch of like the kind of 50s sci-fi it's paying tribute to. And I just loved like the look, like the production design of that movie is so great, and especially that like to kind of speak to the lived-in quality of Star Wars, like it has a futuristic kind of vibe, but also it so has the look of like everyone building these sets was smoking constantly. And like they're just like, you know, it feels like if you were to go into like, maybe you guys are a bit too young for this, but if you've ever gone to like a smoker's house and like the walls are yellow and shit, and it's like, okay.
It's if you like the design of the Millennium Falcon, Barbarella's spaceship is done in shag carpet.
Yeah.
Like all the walls, ceilings, floors, entire thing. It's excellent. The opening credits of the film is her theme song, which is very charming and gets stuck in my head so frequently. And it's just her stripping off her spacesuit to the theme song while like the opening text of the credits like covers her tastefully. Moments later, you do just see her fully nude, so it's like all for naught. But I think that makes it funnier.
It's much funnier that way, yeah.
Yeah, it's actually the first R-rated comic book film. It doesn't have an R rating anymore, but it did at one point in its time. Now I think it's PG, which makes the R rating even funnier.
One of those great PG movies of that time where it's like, we'll have nudity in it, I guess. But Lily, have you seen this movie?
I haven't, which is crazy for so many reasons. I love Jane Fonda. My favorite club here in Austin is called Barbarella, and I have only seen, they have TVs all around the club that are just playing the movie constantly. So I have seen bits and pieces with no sound while I may have been under the influences of substances, but it feels like a good state of mind to watch that movie. And anyway, I need to dedicate some time to actually watch it because I do love the vibe, but I have a feeling I'll like the actual journey and experience as well, and not just, you know, the aesthetic. But I love Jane Fonda, and I watched her documentary recently and her talking about it, you know, her sort of, should she feel regretful after having done that and being sort of, you know, this burgeoning activist and feminist scholar, but you know how she stands by it, and I totally agree, and I think it looks incredible and empowering, and in that very special 60s way, you know?
Yeah, it's like if Star Wars, but like instead Luke is like a beautiful woman.
That sounds great.
So basically Star Wars.
I don't recall Jane Fonda saying anything about going to Tashi Station for some power converters or anything like that, or having to join the academy next year. But
converters, finding the evil scientist Duran, same thing.
Yep, that's Duran. That is, yeah, that's where fucking Duran got their name. Was the scientist in this movie?
Oh my god,
it's crazy. But yeah, let's go ahead and just restate our titles to everybody out there in case you want to add them to your watch list or whatever. I had the 1956 John Ford film The Searchers.
I had Spaceballs from Mel Brooks. Can't talk.
And I had Barbarella from 1968, directed by Roger Vadim.
Yes, and on that note, we're going to start wrapping up here, but we want to thank some people before we get out of here, including Burial Grid for our music for the show. Purchase his music at burialgrid.com. I should shout out, if everything goes well by the time this comes out, I would have commissioned him to compose new Star Wars-esque music for the show, so I'm sure that sounds amazing. We're recording this in January, so I don't know what it sounds like currently, but I'm sure it sounds great. Also, thanks to Michelle Kyle for our artwork. Follow her at MishKyle96 on various social medias. And thanks to our supporters on Patreon, patreon.com/cinema2letter, where for just $1 a month, you get access to stuff like bonus material that we cover, some audio reviews, including you can dig in the archives, you can find stuff with Charlie and Lily, where we talked about some movies in the past, and I'm sure, once again, this is in January, so I might do an insert maybe here about the stuff that you'll be able to see on the Patreon right now. Yes, thank you, Thomas. Way back in the past, in January of 2026, This is Thomas from May of 2026 here to just tell you about the Patreon real quick. In May, along with, throughout all of this, we'll be doing our audio reviews that are chosen by the patrons out there, including we'll be doing one for I Love Boosters, which will be coming out in May. That was one that the Cineast patrons voted on. We'll also be doing a poll, which if you're listening to this on the day it comes out, it'll be on this coming Wednesday, the 6th. You'll have to vote for one of these 4 movies that'll be the audio review subject for June. One of these 4 that will win will become the audio review subject for June, which includes Steven Spielberg's Disclosure Day, the new Pixar movie Toy Story 5, the 5th, of course, in the Toy Story franchise. We're not counting Lightyear, I guess, here. The horror movie Backrooms, which comes out in late May, but I wouldn't be able to cover it before June, so we're going to put that there. And then also Jackass, Last and Best. Those are the 4 movies to vote on. On the 6th, you'll have until, a few days to vote for that. So once again, Disclosure Day, Toy Story 5, Backrooms, and Jackass, Last and Best. But along with that stuff, we'll be doing all sorts of Star Wars related stuff on Patreon, including in May, we'll have a big bonus podcast of, we didn't do a March Madness this year because we decided to delay it to May. We'll be doing a March Madness style bracket of what we call Star Wars Glup Shittos. So all the weird ancillary characters. I'll at least tease that maybe the number 1 seed of that is Salacious Crumb, the little kind of laughing guy from Jabba's Palace in Return of the Jedi. That's kind of the idea with the Glup Shittos, that kind of character. So there's that guy, and also 31 other of those that were chosen by myself and the 2 participants for that, along with the patrons. You all got to choose for that. Then in June, there will be an audio commentary for a Star Wars movie I'm not covering on the main feed. And on May 25th, you get to vote for one of these 3 movies that we could potentially do a commentary for, myself and a guest. That will be Return of the Jedi, Revenge of the Sith, and Solo: A Star Wars Story. One of those 3 will get an audio commentary for June. And also during June, we'll be doing another episode of Marco Polo, which we'll be doing Marco Polo. It's once a month kind of podcast with myself and Tori DePina, who will be a guest on an upcoming episode on the main feed. But in addition, we'll also be doing a big Marco Polo holiday special, in which we will be covering the 3 Family Guy Star Wars specials and the 3 Robot Chicken specials for Star Wars as well. All will be covered on that particular holiday special episode. And then finally in July, I'll be doing an Andor retrospective. A retrospective on both seasons of Andor with some guests. So once again, if you subscribe to the Patreon for just $1 a month, or you can buy individual audio for $3 a month, that's the lowest I could do, just given Patreon weird pricing stuff. You will be able to, once again, listen to a Glup Shitto March/May Madness draft. Then in June, we'll have the audio commentary of a Star Wars movie not on the main feed of your choice, patrons, to vote on, along with the Marco Polo Star Wars holiday special. And then finally, the Andor retrospective in July. So that's all on the Patreon, and if you subscribe to the Patreon, you get all that bonus stuff, and in addition to my gratitude, especially just a shout out to all the patrons during the kind of, gap in the show, the hiatus, helping to keep the show alive, and I'm soon going to be paying off the hosting fee for the year, and that's all thanks to the patrons. You all really help, that pays for that, and allows me to do some other fun stuff, so thank you so much. But now, back to past Thomas along with Charlie and Lily. But all sorts of stuff over there. Just $1 a month, patreon.com/cinema2letter. And then, of course, thanks really needs to go to our 2 guests here, Lily, Charlie. Thank you so much for starting this journey with me into the new uncharted territory of Cinema to the Letter in the Star Wars era. Really appreciate it. Please plug yourselves, keeping in mind that, like I said, we're recording this in January, and I'm planning on releasing this, if all goes well, on May 4th, 2026. So who knows what's going on right now? I'm sure everything's fine. But please plug yourselves if you want to people to find you on the internet?
I am on Letterboxd at Easy Writer. That's EASYWRITER. I'm really into Letterboxd. Follow me there. I have a weekly double feature blog where I watch two films connected by a similar theme that comes out every Thursday on my website, lilylabens.com. I'm on Instagram at lily.labens. I'm not even gonna plug the desolate trash bin that is Twitter, but I'm on there as well, I guess.
A real wretched hive of scum and villainy over there.
Exactly. And yeah, keep an eye out. I write reviews for various publications sometimes and get to do cool podcasts like this.
Oh, shucks. But Charlie, where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Charlie Suor. That's going to be CharlieSuor. And you can find me on Letterboxd at Gloom Division. Make sure you check out my Instagram, even if you don't have Instagram, because I have the link to my website there, which will keep you updated on all the fun articles I write, videos I post, podcasts I guest on, and I do work with film festivals too. I'm a jack of all trades and truly a master of none, but you can find out more on my Instagram.
And for more of our show, you can find us on whatever hell site you're perusing. We're at Cinema #2 Letter. And you can find me specifically mainly on Blue Sky and Letterboxd at Not the Who's Tommy. I'm especially active on Letterboxd. I write too many stupid little joke things over on Letterboxd.
They're really funny, though.
Stop. No. What? I'm not fishing. No, me? Stop. But yeah, I'm over there mainly Letterboxd at Not the Who's Tommy, and you can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts or other podcasting platforms. If you're listening on Talk Film Society, our podcast network, you might listen to all the other great shows that are on the network, and you can also dig into the archives in our Podbean main feed for all the various episodes of this show, as well as Double Edge Double Bill, including, I should shout out Lili. One of your episodes is the most listened to thing on the entire Podbean feed.
Oh my god, work.
The Eternal Sunshine episode is the most downloaded thing ever on this feed.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Love that.
So hopefully we get the Lili Labens bump for this particular episode for Star Wars, I'm sure.
Right now, using the Force or whatever the fuck.
Right, you search your feelings, you know it to be true. Then you can help us with that. And if nothing else, if you want to support us, you can rate, review, or simply share the show around to give us more visibility out there. If you can't support us on the Patreon, that's cool. The free way to help us out, just rate, review, or just share the show around. Helps us out, gives us more visibility, helps people search the Force and find us. And click that download button with the Force. Hopefully that's what they do. But on that note, it's time we end things by just teasing our next episode, our Eye for Indie, which some people might be saying, Eye for Indie, Star Wars, how does that work, Thomas? What are you planning on putting in that slot? Well, the slot that we're putting in there is going to be Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. It does count. George financed that movie all by himself. It absolutely counts for this. But I'm curious, Lili and Charlie, your general kind of like brief thoughts on Phantom Menace specifically.
Trying to remember that one.
That's the first of the prequels. That's the one with Jar Jar in it prominently, and the Darth Maul shows up with your double lightsaber thing.
Oh yeah, definitely that moment. Yeah.
I think it's fine.
Yeah.
It has really, really cool things that I like, and then it has really, really bad things that I dislike, and it becomes a completely neutral film experience.
Cancels out.
Yeah, net zero.
Yeah. I'll have a lot of things to talk about with that movie. As I'll just say, someone who was a young child in the wake of Phantom Menace coming out. That movie has a very interesting place in my heart. Not a fond place, but not also a dark place. Just a very interesting place for me. That I'll get into next time. But until then, everybody, it's time we end this as any Star Wars podcast should end about this particular movie, which is a big medal ceremony where everyone's cheering. Lili and Charlie have their medals, and I'm the Chewbacca off on the side with no medal, but a hearty.
Aww.
We'll get you a medal.
Yay!
Yeah.
I hope there's chocolate in it.